Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 regular school board meeting. The time is now 6 p.m. The school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge we are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education in a safe, supportive environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Mrs. Carol Hubbard, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the roll?
Miss Charlie,
Here.
Mr. Shannon,
Here.
Colonel Cole,
Here.
Colonel Foster is excused. Mr. Burgess,
Here.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Here.
Mr. Doran is excused. Miss Julian,
Here.
Miss Maple,
Here.
Mrs. Hardy,
Here.
Mrs. Burnett.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
Next on our agenda is our ESP of the month. Hannah Hodges, Prevention Intervention Specialist for Lathrop High School, will be recognized as the ESP of the month for January 2025. Julie Dennehy, Lathrop High School Vice Principal, will make the presentation.
Hello. My name is Julie Dennehy, and I'm an assistant principal at Lathrop High School. And I had nominated Miss Hannah Hodges here for this particular award because she has been an outstanding person working within our school. She's reliable, she's dependable, and she does everything that she can to help support our students, especially those who are struggling and going through a very tough time. So for Miss Hannah Hodges, I have nominated you and want to present you with our ESP of the month of January. Yay.
Next up is our Excellent Educator Award of the month. Jenny Thompson, second grade teacher for Ladd Elementary School, will be recognized as the Excellent Educator of the month for January 2025. Michelle Heminger, Ladd Elementary School principal, will not be able to make the presentation tonight. In her place will be Assistant Superintendent Sarah Gillum.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Michelle is very disappointed to not be here tonight, but in her stead, I'm excited to introduce you all to Jenny Thompson. Jenny Thompson exemplifies the Excellent Educator Award because she constantly strives to do what is best for Ladd Elementary School. This includes exceptional contributions to the education of students, commitment to professional growth, and positive impact on our school community. Mrs. Thompson is a dedicated and passionate educator whose primary focus is always on what is best for students. Through her excellent reading instruction, she has not only fostered a love of reading, but also helped countless students achieve significant academic growth. Through class instruction, walk to read instruction, and after-school reading tutoring instruction, she has inspired students to be as passionate about reading as she is. Her ability to differentiate instruction, adapt to various learning styles, and create a supportive, inclusive classroom environment has made a lasting impact on students' academic success and confidence. In addition to her outstanding teaching, Mrs. Thompson is a natural leader among colleagues. She willingly shares her expertise, providing mentorship and training that have helped elevate the entire team's instructional practices. On PLC days, Mrs. Thompson's room is the hub for Walk to Read, collaboration, and teaching of best practices. Her collaborative spirit and dedication to improving the school's educational environment set her apart as a true asset to our school. Mrs. Thompson is also deeply committed to positive behavior modification strategies.
The name
She serves
changed
on the
by a 2-to-1
PBIS committee
margin. That was a poll of 1,800
Cool.
Alaskans taken
for the school
earlier
and
this
consistently
month
creates an
after
environment
Trump
of
closed
mutual
the
respect, empathy,
The
and
poll
accountability,
showed Alaska
ensuring that
Republicans
all
were more
students
evenly split
develop both
on
academically and
choosing to
socially.
move back to
She models
McKinley,
these strategies
but
for her
on the whole,
colleagues and is
it's
the first to
not
help those
popular.
around her to brainstorm additional ideas to help students engage. Her work in fostering a positive school culture is evident in the growth of our students both inside and outside the classroom. Mrs. Thompson is the epitome of an excellent educator, and Michelle is happy to let the board and public in on a few of the amazing things that she does every day for her students, their families, and Ladd Elementary School. Please join me in congratulating Mrs. Thompson. I'll shake your hand first, okay, and then you get to take that in your left hand and over there, and I'll meet you. Oh. I didn't even know what to do. You did the teacher thing.
Next on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Consent agenda items marked with an asterisk are considered routine items not requiring public discussion by the school board. Unless removed from the consent agenda, asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or a member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, the request must be made to a board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only a board member may remove an item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will then be adopted by one single motion. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with consent items?
Move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
Ms. Richardson, would you please call the vote?
Colonel Cole,
Yes.
Miss Charlie,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Miss Maple,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
Yes.
Miss Julian,
Yes.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Yes.
Mrs. Burnett.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Next up is public comments on reports and non-agenda items. During this section of the agenda, the school board welcomes public comments on non-agenda topics. This is an opportunity for community members to be heard. The board will note the topics, though no official actions will be taken. Topics may be referred to the administration for further research and future potential action. Board members will not respond to comments or questions made by the public. Concerned citizens should first discuss matters with the superintendent or designee. After the superintendent or designee has heard the concerns, they may be brought to the board. Individual students and district personnel may not be discussed in public testimony. Please contact the district office to route concerns about individual students or district personnel through the appropriate channels. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak on agenda items at the time the item is introduced for action and/or discussion. Once the agenda is published, testifiers should email or call the school board office by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting to sign up for public testimony. Students who have signed up in advance or are in the room and wishing to testify will be called upon first, followed by members of the public who have signed up in advance in the order in which they have signed up. If time remains, anyone else in person will be invited to testify until the 1-hour time limit has been reached. A sign-up sheet is available in the boardroom before the start of every meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each and should provide their first name, spell their last, and state their area of residence. You will also notice some new time clocks here in our boardroom, one right behind me and one in the back. The light will turn green when your time starts. When you have reached 30 seconds left in your testimony, the light will turn yellow. At the end of your 3 minutes, a buzzer will sound. At this time, do we have any students present in the boardroom who wish to provide public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to our list. We have up first Joshua Hamilton. Not seeing Josh. Okay. Up next, then, we will have Miss Jane Bedford. State your first name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Jane Bedford, Bedford, Fairbanks. Thank you again to the board for the hard work and the work that you have in front of you. Tonight, I want to speak to Title I, as there were some questions at the last work session. While I do not claim to be an expert in grants, I have spent 29 years at Hunter, which is a Title I school. You have the big picture. Title I funds come from the federal government to the state, to the district, and you'll get more information from our Student Support Services Department at the next work session. Of note, to qualify as a Title I school, 40% or more of a student's population must qualify for free or reduced lunch by federal guidelines. With the proposed shifting and moving of students, there is not a clear way to determine which schools may or may not qualify or continue to qualify for Title I funds, and this is one of our highest needs demographics. When funds are allocated to the schools, each school title team works to do a deep dive into school data. Each school team is unique, but does include the administrator, teachers, support staff, and parents at a minimum. This team looks at data on reading and math achievement, growth, attendance, behavior, and social emotional learning, and completes a needs assessment. The needs assessment helps the team determine the best way to utilize funding to meet students' needs. School teams write the budget plan according to those needs. This plan can take many forms. However, most Title I schools in Fairbanks do utilize funds for additional staffing. The difference is how that staffing is used in each building. The Hunter Title I team firmly believes in placing Title I funds into staffing. 89% of our funding is spent that way. We believe having small groups of kids in front of well-trained tutors and creating smaller groups in classrooms, working on specific skills in reading and social emotional skill development is far more effective than putting students in front of computers. Much like a good business plan, it takes more than 2 or 3 years to see the fruits of that labor. Hunter's current title plan took shape about 6 years ago and is reviewed and tweaked yearly based on data and our needs assessment. With the interruption of COVID and our roof failure, also in that 6-year period, we just now are starting to see the results of that work. Hunter is no longer a targeted support improvement school. We are a universal support school for the next year based on our overall school index value, which is a numerical score that represents a school's performance across academic indicators like standardized tests and student growth. The higher the index value, the better the overall school performance. Having an overall school index performance of 16.02 in the 21-22 school year, improving to an overall index value of 33.85 in the 23-24 school year. Our chronic absenteeism improved 5% over that same time period, and our ELA proficiency improved for 3rd grade from 6.25 to 11.1%.
Thank you, Mrs. Bedford. Up next, we have Summer Ham. State your first name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Summer Ham, last name Hahm. Good evening to the board. Thank you for this opportunity to submit community feedback, and thank you to each of you for your service. I'm a longtime listener of these meetings, but a first-time testifier. My spouse and I have 2 kids attending the district, and over the last 7 years, we have had the privilege of being in several school communities, including a charter school, homeschool with Best, and currently we have a 7th grader at Randy Smith Middle School and a 4th grader at U Park Elementary School. And I have positive things to say about each of those experiences. I'm here tonight to address the school consolidation plan and to advocate for those children whose schools will not be closing, but who will be redistributed to other schools by the proposed adoption of the newly drafted boundary lines. U Park is slated to lose roughly 40 children currently enrolled at the school in this transition, and we are resigned that our child will probably not be able to finish their 5th grade year at U Park. What surprised me most about these draft boundary lines is that they also directly affect middle school, none of which are slated for closure. We know that middle school children have a strong and innate desire to belong. Middle schoolers are just beginning to understand and experience more complex emotions and social situations. Our 7th grader hopes to complete their middle school experience at Randy Smith. I would urge the board to review the proposed boundary lines carefully and to please select the least impactful to our communities. I would also politely suggest that the board consider creating and granting grandfather rights for these middle school children so that they can remain in their home schools as long as school capacity, pupil-teacher ratios, and independent transportation allows. The district's out-of-area attendance policy does not guarantee that displaced children will be prioritized as applicants. A grandfather clause would give families time to comply with the new regulations, and keeping as many children as possible at their original schools will lessen the impact of the school closures. What a difficult time for our Fairbanks community. We are in a complex and dire financial situation district-wide. Many families will be more greatly impacted than mine. We understand that privilege. In our household, we are preparing for these upcoming changes by teaching our children to embrace uncertainty. I would like to close with a message to the families that may have incoming students to U Park in the fall of 2025. U Park's a wonderful school with excellent teachers, a supportive staff, fantastic extracurriculars, and robust parent involvement. And my kids have thrived during their time at U Park, and I know yours will too.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your testimony. Up next, we have Audra Hull. State your first name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Audra Hull, Hull. Informed decisions are decisions made on facts and complete information. You, the school board, will be expected to make a decision on February 4th. That decision should be an informed decision. The slideshow from the January 6th work session referenced the 2022 U.S. Census when talking about the low 0 to 4 population. However, there is no 2022 U.S. Census. Can this please be addressed in the next work session? Was this a typo? Was this in regards to the Western Demographic Study done? If it was the Western Demographic Study, can we see those numbers? I have only been able to find this, the school efficiency data and observations that was dated September 21st, 2021, which has no reference to that age group. I would also like to address the comment that was printed in the Daily News Miner about the Hunter neighborhood. Quote, "This is an area that has a smaller declining school age population. There has been a shift in how housing in that area is utilized," close quote. The same administrator referenced the hospital buying and flipping apartments for staff. I wanted to get the facts. I reached out to the hospital for clarification. I was able to get that. The following is information that was received by Carrie Burrell, the Chief Strategy Officer. Quote, "Foundation Health Partners does own several apartment buildings near the hospital campus. However, we've had this housing stock for years, decades. It is not a new thing. We have recently purchased 2 properties, a 4-plex on Burnett Street in Hunter boundaries and the Dixon Apartments in Denali Elementary boundaries. We do not own Dwell. This is a privately owned. However, we have leased 8 units in that complex until mid-2026. As you have noted, the Dwell units aren't flipped units. They were new construction on property that didn't have housing before. But the vast majority of our staff are local. Many of the employees we hire from out of state begin living in Fairbanks in one of our housing units temporarily while they look for permanent housing. Their children are likely enrolled at Hunter. Many of our permanent employees choose to live in the Hunter area as it is close to work, childcare, other amenities, or because they have other family in the neighborhood. Furthermore, Alaska Corporation for Affordable Housing has just that was close quote. Furthermore, Alaska Corporation for Affordable Housing has just completed an apartment complex in the walking zone of Fairbanks, which I confirmed this morning with the transportation office. Borealis Park has 40 units, 17 of which are 2 bedrooms and 5 are 3 bedrooms. All Borealis Park units will be supported with rental assistance from Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Waitlists for families seeking such housing are exceptionally long, ranging from 6 months to over a year. Given the nature of the affordable housing market supply and demand, these units will fill quickly with families, thus adding to the student body of Hunter, which as of today is 338 students. As I stated before, on February 4th, you will be expected to make a decision. I implore you to make sure it is a fully informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Bruno Grunau. State your last name, or state your first name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
You got it. Bruno, Grunau. Thank you. Thank you all for your service to our community and for the opportunity to be here. This is support for a STEAM-focused magnet school. Fairbanks is home to extraordinary resources like UAF, a nationally recognized STEM university, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the only national laboratory in Alaska. And these institutions are solving global challenges in energy, Arctic science, and environmental resilience. So imagine what more our students and our community could achieve if we gave them resources and the preparation they need to make Alaska a global leader in innovation and energy. And I think a STEAM magnet school might be a piece of that, the equation. And it's not just about the education, and really it's about the future of Fairbanks and Alaska as a hub for creativity and problem solving and progress. So zooming back out, I think Alaska's potential for innovation is unmatched. There's a study that NREL did that found that Alaska's wind and hydro energy potential along the coast more than doubles that of the east and west coast of lower 48 combined, which could power all of North America. And so opportunities like this demand a workforce that's skilled in science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math that can blend creativity with problem solving. But Alaska schools really are consistently ranked among the lowest in the nation, and we're losing families and future leaders. My organization recently lost a world-class energy expert to Anchorage because Fairbanks didn't have a STEM-based focused school. Meanwhile, a demand for Pearl Creek STEAM school is overwhelming. There was a survey that just came out in the last 24 hours. 101 families expressed interest, including 39 from outside the district. That's outside the district, which means you could potentially pull them back into the district, restore some of that BSA funding we've lost. And that's a clear opportunity to reverse declining enrollment and restore that lost funding while meeting that hunger for a quality, innovative education. A STEAM magnet school would transform Fairbanks. I think Pearl Creek's already got the foundation. From STEM nights to hands-on science programs with NASA and NREL and UAF, the school's got decades of proven success. And I think that Pearl Creek's 95% of the way there. I think a STEAM magnet school would start to make Fairbanks a hub for talent, attract families and businesses, and showcase our commitment to excellence. And while Alaska's higher level education system, state level funded source of education systems failing our kids, I think Pearl Creek can be a game changer to reverse that trajectory. Last May, NASA selected Pearl Creek students to present their findings at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is a sign of the potential already here. But opportunities like this shouldn't be rare. They should be the norm. I think with 101 families eager to enroll, 39 of them from outside of our district, ready to come in, the demand is undeniable. I say let's formalize Pearl Creek's strengths into a magnet school that reverses the declining enrollment and positions Fairbanks as a leader in innovative education. We got the resources and the talent and demand, and I urge for support of the STEAM magnet school. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Katie Spellman. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Katie Spellman, Spellman. The kids around the school district call me Dr. Katie or Scientist Katie. And I am from Fairbanks, Alaska. I grew up here, went to Joy Elementary School, one of the victims of school consolidation, but we're still standing, Brandy. Both my parents gave their entire careers to this school district. My sister has given her career to this school district. We love the Fairbanks North Star Burrow School District. And I sit here before you as a scientist and someone who is a fan of innovation. I urge you to think innovatively in the school consolidation process. I run some of UAF's longest standing STEAM education programs alongside Dr. Elena Sparrow. We run the GLOBE program, which is one of the NASA programs that Bruno mentioned in his testimony. It is in every state in the United States. It is NASA's youth-based research mission. So the youth are doing real research for NASA. I also run with Elena Sparrow the Bonanza Creek Long-Term Ecological Research Programs Education Outreach. We pull in millions of dollars of grants every single year. We would love to give it to a STEM magnet school in Fairbanks as a conduit for STEAM education in our town. I want to two things in the 1 minute 30 seconds. I want you to consider the lost scientific potential of the land itself at some of these sites. All 5 of the sites that you're proposing for school closures are GLOBE schools, and they've all contributed critical data to understand how environmental change happens. The GLOBE program has been going on in the Fairbanks North Suburban School District since 1996. So that's a legacy of data. I want to highlight one in particular. It's the Pearl Creek Elementary School. It resides on the lands that Les Viereck started monitoring in the early 1960s. And the students at Pearl Creek have, just in the past 5 years, they're the national leaders in continuing the legacy of Les Viereck's data. Do you know who Les Viereck is? He wrote the Trees and Shrubs of Alaska. He is like, when you describe the vegetation in Alaska, you describe it by the Viereck Code. And Les Viereck, the students are stewarding his long-term data into the future so that we can track change. They collected 1,352 observations of plant phenology to continue that data into the future, including some of the board members' children themselves were stewarding that data set. They were #1 in the nation in terms of GLOBE phenology data collection, out data collecting 3 times more than the second school in the nation in GLOBE. And GLOBE is a longstanding, very popular program. So I just urge the board to consider the scientific loss should the youth be separated from that lands.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will go to Zoom, and we have April Monroe. Mrs. Richardson, is April online?
Yep, I'm here.
We can hear you. Go ahead, state your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Perfect. My name is April Monroe. My last name is spelled Monroe. And I wanted to talk in support of the proposition to turn Pearl Creek into a magnet school. And there were a few things that I wanted to touch on that are not actually strictly related to education so much as they are related to our economic health. I've been a real estate agent in Fairbanks for 19 years this year. And I'm a real estate instructor. So I've got a long resume in real estate with a heavy concentration of practice in this area. One of the things I think that you could find consensus among very experienced real estate agents and appraisers at Fairbanks would be that Pearl Creek as a school is a feature, an economic feature of the real estate market. I did a quick search to look through property descriptions, and one of the most frequent terms used when describing a property for marketing purposes in this part of Fairbanks are the words Pearl Creek. I can tell you over the course of my career, I wouldn't even be able to enumerate the number of people who have purchased homes in the district in order to get to Pearl Creek. So I wanted to highlight that there are economic implications which go outside of just, those strictly related to education. I think that it would be impossible to quantify the change to home values in the area, but it certainly would be, I think bordering ridiculous to say that they wouldn't occur. And that has got implications for our borough economy. I also want to highlight that Pearl Creek having the kind of popularity that draws people in, right? People purchasing houses, and every single year for as long as Pearl Creek has been in operation, there is a long wait list, anywhere from 70 to over 140 students who are wanting to come out of district to Pearl Creek. A survey was mentioned earlier. I actually wanted to update those numbers. Currently, that survey has 141 students who are not in the Pearl Creek district 61 of those who are currently not in the district at all. They're either in homeschool or private school who want to come to Pro Creek. There has always been a demand on that level, and it's because Pro Creek is functioning. It's because of the outcomes. I think that it's great that people love their schools. I think it's wonderful, and I understand that community members are arriving to say, hey, we like our school, or we think children will thrive in other schools. But there's a lot of data to indicate that Pro Creek has a different and a higher degree of pull within our community and could be the type of facility that we need, the type of school that we need to draw people in and to keep people here. So I want to urge you to deeply and sincerely, seriously consider the magnet possibility. Consider that the type of education available at Pro Creek should be offered to our entire community, and consider that the long view in education, the long view in community building takes into consideration all of these factors. And I think there is a failure at a planning level to take those into consideration, and that it is utterly critical, especially from a school board, from educators, to look at data as it comes in and to make a decision with that in mind. So I would urge you to return a recommendation to close 4
Thank you
schools
for
and
your
let the district
testimony,
do
Ms.
thorough
Monroe.
examination of whether or not Pro Creek is viable. Thank you.
Up next on testimony, we have Gail McBride. State your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Gail McBride, MCBRIDE, with Moms for Liberty. The community's concern over the school closures in discussion currently is hard to hear. Each affected family matters. Our concerns over material inside the schools is as important. We will continue to bring this information so we can deal with it a little later in the year. As I said at last meeting, I will bring information, not my opinion, on the dangers to our children from the graphic material and gender ideology in our schools. This is a quote from the New York Times, which had long accepted and even pushed the, quote, science underlying transgenderism. Dr. Hilary Cass, a highly respected pediatrician in England and former president of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, in 2020, the UK's National Health Service tasked her with conducting a review of its youth gender treatments and international guidelines of care. The catalyst for this intervention was mounting allegations that the country's youth gender clinic was recklessly prescribing puberty blockers to children and only conducting superficial evaluations with patients. Cass's 4-year investigation was exhaustive. The result? A scathing report. Her final report, published last month, concluded that the evidence supporting the use of puberty-blocking drugs and other hormonal medications in adolescents was remarkably weak. The Times didn't stop at merely reporting her findings. They gave her a platform to shred America's trans-industrial complex. During the one-on-one interview, Cass rebuked the American Academy of Pediatrics for misleading the public and said that its position was animated by politics rather than science. She even described the AAP as a fairly left-leaning organization. The Washington Post, the Times' ideological twin, likewise weighed in. Its editorial board recently addressed the U.S. Supreme Court's consideration of a Tennessee law that bars gender transitions for minors. As the Post emphasized, medical progress is impossible unless null and negative results are published as promptly as positive ones. In short, the Post conceded that, in the absence of clear data and with the possibility of significant publication bias or researchers massaging their results, parents might not have adequate information to make sound decisions for their children. It is critical, close quote, it is critical that we remove all gender ideology and change our policy to
Thank you for your
refer all
testimony, Ms.
gender
McBride.
issues to parents. Thank you.
Up next for testimony, we have Leah Admonson. If you can state your name, spell your last, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Leah Amundsen, Amundsen. Hello, my name is Leah DeGrappa Amundsen, and I'm from Two Rivers, Alaska. At the age of 36, I'm an archaeologist, a soccer coach, a current graduate student, a dog musher, and a tree feller for the IBEW based here in Fairbanks, Alaska. I give a lot of credit to who I am because of where I am from. I've chosen to speak up today to tell you all how proud I am to be from Two Rivers, Alaska. If it were not for my community of Two Rivers and my participation at the Two Rivers Elementary School, I'd be a completely different person. The Two Rivers Elementary School means more to the Two Rivers community than any outsider could understand. As an adult, I look back and realize that the Two Rivers community has produced some of the most artistic and hardworking folks that I've ever met. Currently, I own my dream home in Two Rivers, a property that is located on the exact road that I grew up off of. I run dogs on the winter trails that I grew up recreating on. I walk down to the Two Rivers Lodge to see people and neighbors that I've known since I was a child. Our relationships to the land and connections with each other is strong in the Two Rivers and Pleasant Valley areas. The Two Rivers Elementary School is incredibly important to the survival of our Two Rivers community. Busing Two Rivers kids to town at such a young age would be detrimental to not only their scholastic growth, but detrimental to the parents, to the Two Rivers parents that rely on the immense benefits that their kids gain from attending the Two Rivers Elementary School. I ask you all today, as a lifelong Two Rivers kid, to please keep the Two Rivers School open. By allowing Two Rivers Elementary School to stay open, you will continue to contribute to the education and inspiration that aids our Two Rivers youth in becoming influential and beneficial members of our greater Fairbanks community. Thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Janet Ferris. Good evening, Ms. Ferris. State your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Janet Ferris, Farris, and I am the Fort Wainwright School Liaison Officer. I would like to share information about a new committee which involves Eielson Air Force Base, Fort Wainwright, and the school district command and leadership, along with other community and school district members. The committee is called the Student Engagement Transition Support Committee, also known as SETS. The purpose of SETS committee is to work collaboratively to develop initiatives that support military-connected students' transitions within the local community, identify any issues impacting these students, highlight existing positive programs, recommend actionable strategies to the school board for improving military-connected students' outcomes in academic performance, social and emotional development, and community engagement, and advocate for state policy, program, and resource changes to benefit these students. The committee will meet at least twice a calendar year, one time at Fort Wainwright and one time at Eielson Air Force Base. The committee will have its first meeting on February 18th at Fort Wainwright. I would like to end with, even though this committee was developed to support the military-connected student, the positive implementations that can be developed by this committee can benefit all students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Jeff Mulbauer. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Muehlbauer, Muehlbauer, and I'm a resident of Fairbanks and Farmers Loop and the proud parent of 2 Pearl Creek puffins. And I have some notes here, and as I listen to scientist Bruno and Katie and realtor April speak, I realize I'm largely going to be redundant with their data, so I'm going to be your data point instead. My wife and I chose to move to Fairbanks about 4 years ago, and it's not an exaggeration to say it was based on the presence of Pearl Creek. So I'm your data point. When we talk about, people are always asking about how do we live in Pearl Creek? Who are those people? Those people are me. Without the presence of Pearl Creek as a school in that area, I don't know that I would have taken the job I took. I don't know that we would have moved not only to Fairbanks, but to the state of Alaska, period. Pearl Creek has that pull. I want to point out as well that the proposal to turn it into a STEAM-oriented magnet school strikes me as being incredibly well-reasoned. I've already seen firsthand in the 4 years my children have been attending that school how Pearl Creek is already excelling and truly goes above and beyond already in support of STEAM education. And I worry in part that that's going to be lost if the school closes because that's not as easily replicated elsewhere. They don't necessarily have the long-standing infrastructure that the Pearl Creek's already devoted to it. And additionally, its proximity to UAF means that we draw in people, STEAM-oriented scientists, who may not choose to go to other places as far away to support that sort of a program. I've seen the programs that scientist Katie puts on. I've seen the outreach that scientist Bruno puts on. I was fortunate to get to co-lead our STEAM night last year, and I can speak to being the bouncer at that event and how at 8 o'clock after multiple hours of being there, I've had to turn kids away saying, please stop firing rockets now, please stop petting the sled dog, you need to go home now. I really think Pearl Creek could excel in that situation as a STEAM-based magnet school, and it's something that I really strongly encourage you to consider. And finally, as we consider invariably this school closure and the pain of that, another data point perspective, my wife and I are asking, well, what do we do with our kids when Pearl Creek closes? Where do we send them? Do we send them on an hour-long bus ride? Where? And I know families throughout the district are asking that question. If we're already asking that question, the idea of opening a Pearl Creek magnet STEAM school is going to be extremely attractive to a lot of people, and it's something that I urge you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Jesse Hensel. And state your name, spell your last. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Jesse Hensel, Hensel. I am a Pearl Creek teacher. I teach first grade there and have for almost a decade. And I am testifying in support of the idea of a Pearl Creek magnet school. To bolster that, I just want to point out that this is not a new idea. This is something that staff and administration have talked about at the school for several years, back to when Kate LaPlante was the principal there. And I really do think that we are doing many of the STEAM programs at our school already. So to talk about some specific ones that my class has done, carrying on that lovely legacy at Pearl Creek of place-based science, engineering, arts, math, and technology. I didn't get the order right, but you get the idea. We've worked with One Tree Alaska, and that's what brought me back to Fairbanks as an educator. Globe, as has been mentioned, the Botanical Garden, the Museum of the North, the Agriculture, Forestry, and Art and Fire departments at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, Calypso Farm and Ecology Center, the Growing Esters Biodiversity Seed Library, the Arbor Day Foundation. We've had field trips and connected with Parks and Rec, Fish and Game, the Bureau of Land Management. Students have participated in residencies, exhibitions, and concerts held by Fairbanks Arts Association. And perhaps most poignant for me, my class has been meeting monthly for hands-on activities and shared meals with Fairbanks Native Association's Community Services Elders Program as part of the Sake program at Pearl Creek, where elders, families, and students have come together and done many activities that involved the land around Pearl Creek, including berry picking, dog mushing, the stories and knowledge around birds. We are a model program and partnership, not just for our district, but nationally. And as part of my work with that program, I received Governor's Awards for the Humanities a few years ago. So I hope to continue the partnerships that I have fostered and continued at Pearl Creek, but obviously restarting that in a new location would be difficult. And the easiest way to move forward with the great legacies of Pearl Creek is for it to become a STEAM magnet school.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Up next, we're going to go back to Zoom. And Mrs. Richardson, do we have Lisa Bishop? Miss Bishop, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
State your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lisa Bishop, Bishop, and I live here in Fairbanks. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I am a product of local schools and graduated from UAF with a degree in elementary education in 1990, when there were 40 jobs and 400 applicants, which is the opposite of what we have now. My children attended Pearl Creek in 1998, and I worked there doing a variety of jobs for 15 years, from building sub to Erie tutor to RTI assistant. I went back to school, received my special education certification in 2015, and have worked at several other schools in the district as a resource teacher before returning to Pearl Creek in 2023. I'm thrilled to be back and appreciate even more the things that drew me back here. A strong and effective principal, a cohesive and experienced teaching team and support staff, and supportive and engaged parents. I was able to see how effective this team can be for students, as the school I was at previously had students who were redistricted to Pearl Creek, and students that I had in special education at that school were now 5th graders at Pearl Creek. Many of them had made amazing progress in that year, benefiting greatly from having experienced and effective teachers in general education and special education, peers who were at or above grade level, and with fewer behavior concerns. Although many of these students had been Title I at the previous school, Pearl Creek had worked hard to still provide these students with the physical and emotional supports they needed, such as extra clothes, food for over the weekend, and great support from the counselor for them and their families. This is all part of why I am speaking tonight. I want to see this school continue to perform so well and invite other families to be a part of it. Pearl Creek would be a great school of choice as a STEAM magnet school. It has a well-deserved reputation of being an excellent school in this community and is well connected. There has always been a long list of families seeking out a district placements at Pearl Creek. There is also a long history, as we've heard tonight, of Pearl Creek partnering with UAF and other groups. I can remember my daughter coming home from 1st grade and getting out different types of dried beans from the cupboard to conduct an experiment by putting them in plastic bags with wet paper towels and taping them to the windows, because she had learned it from the scientists from UAF who had come to her class that day. We have current partnerships with groups looking at climate studies, salmon in the classroom, deep sea pressure on icebreakers, stormwater drainage, and a wide variety of other topics. This will be a huge undertaking, but I think you can see how strongly the parents and school staff feel about keeping this school open, that they are willing to undertake this. The building may be old, but the ideas and learning that continue to come from it are first rate, and the group is also looking at other ways to fundraise and address this. Another big positive of Pearl Creek is that we also have Thrive Childcare available before and after school, which is a huge help to working families. The governor has spoken often about his desires for families to have school choice, and this would be a wonderful opportunity to create another magnet school in Fairbanks that already has strong ties and the leadership to see it through. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, do we have Aspen Frick in the room? Miss Richardson, are they online?
They sound all breathy.
Hello?
Is that you, Aspen?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, state your name, spell your last, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aspen Frick, last name Frick, and I attended Pearl Creek Elementary from 2005 to 2012. During that time, I was in Miss McKee, Miss Addis, and Mrs. Brankhart's classes. I'm now 25 years old and have since been a community organizer here in Fairbanks, worked in nonprofit administration and youth counseling, and have gotten a bachelor's degree in history with plans to pursue my master's and PhD. All of this would not have been possible without my education that I received at Pearl Creek. Among my friends that I attended Pearl Creek with, I know engineers, PhD candidates, local business owners, artists, nurses, and scientists who would advocate for Pearl Creek to remain open as much as I do. I'd like to suggest that the school remain open as a magnet school rather than being closed due to reasons that the school district has yet to make fully clear. Pearl Creek is unique in that it is on the northwest side of Fairbanks as well as removed from Fairbanks proper, allowing integration of outdoor education, which is lacking at schools like Anne Wayne, Wood River, and University Park, where Pearl Creek students would be expected to attend. The school also accepts students who live in more remote parts of the borough and is more accessible to these students than schools located within the city. The ages of birth to the age of 8 are the most influential on a child's development, and early development at Pearl Creek Elementary has been extremely important to me and my peers. As we reach our mid to late 20s, I know me and many of my peers are planning on raising children or are already raising children in Goldstream and West Fairbanks. We want our children to go to Pearl Creek. The school district's plan is to move the students to Anne Wayne, Wood River, or University Park. However, the school district is making a grave mistake, and the parents have indicated they will not put their children in these schools and will withdraw from the district entirely. This means there will be even less funding given to the district, which is already struggling. Pearl Creek is a well-performing school and has incredible resources for special needs students and students at varying levels of academic proficiency. The education I received at Pearl Creek is unique to the school itself, and I believe the school should remain open as a magnet school in order to draw in more students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, I do believe we also have this one on Zoom, Rhonda Schlumbaum.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Rhonda Schlumbaum, SCHLUMBOHM. Thank you again for allowing members of our community to give testimony for the schools we love. I appreciate the testimonies of our community as a whole and trying to lift each other up. I want to give you a little more data to think about. SALCHA also participates in One Tree Globe, including a new program last year called Empatico, connecting the 2nd and 3rd grade class with South America, and Salmon in Our Schools. Looking at numbers, I see that Joy, Nordale, Hunter, SALCHA, and Two Rivers are all schools with the lowest socioeconomic students. I see no benefit to further burden families who struggle financially by closing their community school. Looking at the district status, SALCHA falls at 48.7% economically disadvantaged. Anderson Crawford falls at 25.6% economically disadvantaged. With today's numbers, SALCHA's 29 students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, and Anderson's 78 students, you would fall short of the required 40% needed to qualify the school for extra support or Title I. In other words, if SALCHA moves, it not only loses its community, but the extra support that Title I brings. At SALCHA, the extra federal dollars fund people, family nights, and supplies to support things like the science fair. It also provides kids with a weekly fresh fruit, which allows the students an experience of eating something they may not have ever tried. I have been thinking about how to combine services or tweak existing ones to save the school, and here are a couple of ideas. Since it was mentioned that SALCHA could be a homeschool satellite with one teacher, does the board think that the homeschool teacher would be busy enough, or could that position be shared? Make the principal position a head teacher. SALCHA had a head teacher for many years. It even had a half-time principal once. So maybe SALCHA could share a principal with another school. Since the 6th grade is now in the middle school, SALCHA has only 3 classroom teachers. Every teacher teaches a combination grade level. It also means that music can be completed in just over 1.5 hours. Could SALCHA have a music teacher from Eielson or North Pole come twice a week for 1.5 hours? Could the librarian position, which is half-time as it is, be shared with the Burrow Library? Hours could be set up for public and school use. Is there some kind of a grant that would support a lunch person in a rural high-poverty school? I've also heard that there is money from the federal impact aid that could possibly be used in Fairbanks, and this amount is over $9 million. What can I do to help get that money? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Gwen Jackson. State your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Jackson, Jackson.
I'm going to talk fast, but my hope is that my words and 3 minutes will be encouraging, invigorating, and breathe life and hope into you in the situation over which you are guardians. I know you're tired and this is overwhelming. I also know this is a rare and awesome opportunity to imagine, innovate, and transform one of society's greatest institutions, and I don't want us to miss it. As you continue with this process, I caution you to remember the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is merely the automatic physiological ability to hear sounds. Listening is an intent to understand, comprehend, learn, and respond. Listening will build your relationships with us. Merely hearing will destroy them. Please be intentional to listen with the intent to engage with what you hear. Let it be a part of your thoughts and let it have a place of value in your priorities and inspire you as you make decisions. I'm a business owner and I have many perspectives on the situation that you are in, some from the business perspective, some from a family perspective. What I see is a death spiral. Low funding leads to larger class sizes, leads to families removing their kids from the district, leads to even lower funding, leads to school closures, leads to decreasing property values in some school zone areas, leads to lower tax revenue, leads to less funding ability from the borough, leads to more families removing their children from the district, leads to even more closures. It is a revolving door, and the only way to stop it is to shove our foot in it, force it in the other direction. In business, when we have to stop the bleeding, we have to look at what the real bleed out is and preserve the assets that actually have the ability to turn it around. Parents find eliminating programs sad, disappointing, and sometimes infuriating, but they find the class sizes their kids are being shoved into absolutely unacceptable. I believe this is what's driving parents to remove their kids from the district. I know for a fact that's the case for many people I know, including us in our consideration. That's the thing causing the outflow. It's what we need to protect. It's where we need to be the most creative and innovative to turn this thing around. I urge you and encourage you to let your mind operate from a place of hope. Choose to see the realm of possibilities in the Pearl Creek Magnet School. Pearl Creek is ready to step up, do a new thing, do something that breathes life back into the district. They're ready to apply for grants to execute their plan, which includes raising money to have additional staff so they can have smaller class sizes. Their concept is already taking off like wildfire. You heard the number, 61 from out of district are ready to go to a Pearl Creek Magnet School. I'm certain that number has already increased. People are excited about it. They want their kids to go to that school. They have every confidence in Pearl Creek to transform into a fantastic STEAM magnet school. This gives them something to come back to. I believe it would be the start of the very turnaround our district needs, and I believe the energy and vitality that it will create will begin to ripple throughout the district. Give families something to come back to, please.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Timothy Poindexter.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening. If you could state your name, spell your last, you'll have 3 minutes.
Tim Poindexter, Poindexter. I sit here tonight as the treasurer of the PACT, a devoted organization deeply rooted in the welfare and future of our children at Two Rivers Elementary and K-8. We are here to address the looming deficit in the budget that threatens the very existence of the cherished institution. I'm not here as a parent or a grandparent. I've been here last year and I spoke to you about the problems that we had, and it seemed to have sunk in. I hope it will sink in again this year. Two Rivers School is more than just a place of learning. It is a cornerstone of our community. It is where our children come to grow, to discover, and to prepare for the future. The loss of this school would be an irreplaceable blow, not just to the students who walks the hallways, but to the entire community, such as myself, that it serves. We understand the financial challenges that our district is facing. However, the closure of Two Rivers School would have a long-term repercussions that outweigh the immediate savings. It would force students into overcrowded classrooms in neighboring schools, strain transportation resources, and diminish the quality of education that we as a community have worked so hard to uphold. PACT is committed to working alongside the board to find viable solutions. We propose the following steps to address the deficit without sacrificing the future of our children. Community fundraising initiatives, engaging local businesses, residents, and to support the school through donations and fundraising efforts. grants and partnerships, actively seeking educational grants and forming partnerships with organizations that can provide financial support or resources. Budget reevaluation, collaborating with the district to identify non-essential expenditures that can be reduced or reallocated. We firmly believe that together we can overcome this financial hurdle without resorting to the drastic measure of closing Two Rivers School. We urge the board to consider the long-term effect on our students and community and to explore every possible avenue to keep our school doors open. Let us work together to preserve the legacy of Two Rivers School for future generations. Thank you. And if you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or I'll find the answers for you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Poindexter. Up next, we have Jackson Redman. Good evening, Jackson. If you can state your name and spell your last name for us, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jackson Redmond, Redmond.
Could we have you speak into the microphone? There you go.
Good evening, my name is Jackson Redmond, Redmond. And I'm a 5th grader here at Pearl Creek Elementary. I know there's talk about closing our school due to funding issues, but I want to share why that's a big mistake and how it will affect us all. You may think that elementary schools are all the same, but they're not. Our schools are special places where kids like me can build friendships, feel safe, and learn not just from books, but from the people around us. Pearl Creek Elementary is a magical place where kids grow into confident, caring individuals. The teachers aren't just teaching, they care about us and go above and beyond every day. If you close our school, they'll take away more than just a building. You'll take away the heart of our community. If Pearl Creek closes, over 350 students have a foundational part of their lives taken away, shaming students to their core. This doesn't just affect us now, it affects our future. Without the right education, we won't be prepared for high school, college, or careers. That will hurt not just us, but our community and economy as a whole. Closing Pearl Creek would affect far more than just our school. It would affect our future, our community, and our economy. Please don't take away the heart of our community. Let's keep Pearl Creek open for us and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Jackson. Up next, we will move back over to Zoom. Do we have Lily Frick?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Frick. State your name, spell your last. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Lily Frick, Frick. I'm testifying today from my dorm room, thousands of miles away from Pearl Creek. I'm in my 2nd year of undergraduate studies and accepted into a competitive nursing program. The reason I am taking a break from my homework and calling in is because today and every day I'm utilizing skills I learned at Pearl Creek. I know you hear a lot of testimony about how much people love their schools, and the fact of the matter is that any school closure is hard. I want you to know that I do love Pearl Creek and could talk about why for far more than 3 minutes, but more importantly, I want you to know that my experience is representative of student outcomes at this school. Miss Addis took me from a struggling to an advanced reader through countless hours of experiment with the curriculum until something clicked for me. That sent me into my time in late elementary with Mrs. Graves, where her curriculum revolved around literary critique and essay composition. I'm serious when I say I rely on these teachings today, often especially at the college level. Ms. Bartouche led a peacekeeper student conflict resolution group that was deeply influential on my worldview today. These things left me literate, able to make compositions that opened opportunity for me academically and prepared me for student government participation which then led to meaningful civic engagement as an adult. I can draw a line between what I learned in Pro Creek and where I am today in all aspects of my life. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we'll have Summer McMillan. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Summer McMillan. Is McMillan. It's good to see you all tonight. Colonel Cole, it's nice to see you. I'm glad the winter training has allowed you a little time to be here tonight. When I first got the email of school closures, I'm gonna tell you, I went back to my Southern roots and I wrote a speech that was a shame on you, bless your hearts. If you've ever been to the South, you know exactly what that means. I have since had some time to calm down and gather my thoughts. There's really no data that I can present to you that you don't already have. I know that you are in a tough spot. You have inherited a problem with the budget from previous administrations and board members. I thought I was prepared tonight, but I'm not. I would like to ask you if you could be innovative in your thoughts regarding closures and meet with community members, school administration, the school's PTO organizations, come up with some solutions to maybe help the students that are in these communities facing these closures. Colonel Cole, I would love to set up a meeting with you as a military spouse, and our school at Two Rivers being a Purple Star school, I would really like the chance to work with you on finding some solutions to some of these problems. I have a little story that a close friend of mine told me. She is a West Valley alumni, and 20 years ago, her mother, who was from the lower 48, went to the school principal there and said, "Why do we not have snow days?" And the principal at West Valley at that time, he told her mother, he said, "It's safer for our children to be in school than to be home alone." That makes me, when she told me that, that led me to think of what this city's known for. We're the Golden Heart City. And putting the well-being of students in these rural communities above the budget and finding solutions to the problems would go a long way in showing the country and the rest of the state what the heart is in Fairbanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Diana Lineberger. If you can state your name, spell your last, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Diana Lineberger, Leinberger. I'm from the Goldstream Valley, and my daughter goes to Pearl Creek. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I've been struggling to figure out how to respond to the newest plan to close schools. Do I advocate for my community school, or do I accept what seems inevitable? I understand there's a $16 million deficit, and that's best case scenario. I understand that even with the proposed school closures and the contracting of custodial shift work, there is still a $6 million shortfall. I understand the state has failed to adequately fund education. The borough has not provided the full local contribution. Previous assemblies have ratcheted down the spending cap. The voters 2-1 voted down increasing the tax cap for education, and enrollment continues to decline. I say all this to let you know that I do understand the situation we're in, but I am frustrated and disappointed with the district. After last year, it was clear to me that schools would close this year, and I was one of the people who advocated for more time, which I greatly appreciated. But I thought that the community would be engaged in this process throughout the last year. And I'm talking about meaningful engagement, not focus groups and surveys. I thought we would have an opportunity to dig into the data together, develop criteria, look at alternatives, propose ideas, make recommendations, brainstorm, and to be involved. I'm really frustrated that this one plan was released at the beginning of January with the expectation that the school board would vote on it in 30 days. We're talking about closing 5 schools, and the board wasn't given any alternatives. I mean, what are we supposed to do with this? Don't close my school, close somebody else's school? I mean, what are the alternatives? I fail to see that this information being provided and only having 30 days to provide input is meaningful. If my daughter's school must close, I need to understand how that decision was made, and the slides don't cut it for me. The framework is not sufficient information. Where is the data? I don't think the district is hiding anything, and I believe the district has students' best interests at heart. But not hiding anything is not the same as being transparent. I'm frustrated, not necessarily that schools have to close, although I think that's heartbreaking, but at this process. I feel there should be question and answer sessions, not listening sessions. And I do hope the district will go to the communities where the schools are proposed to be closed.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, so that actually brings us to the end of our pre-signups. We do have one more who signed up here in the room, and that is Susanna Westhoff. And this will also be our final testimony, as it will be our 1 hour time limit. If you could state your name, spell your last, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Susanna Westhoff, Westhoff. I'm a teacher here in the district. I have had the privilege of teaching at Nordale, at Two Rivers, and now at Salcha Elementary. And it's been some of the greatest experiences of my life, and I thank you guys for all of the work that you do for us, and I know that this is extremely strenuous. So I'm going to read from here. Believe it or not, talking to adults is a lot more difficult than it is to kids. I don't know why that is, but it says, the mission statement of Fairbanks North Star Borough School District is that the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District is to provide an equitable education and a safe and supportive environment. The district's goal is for all students to succeed and contribute to a diverse society. The idea of shutting down Two Rivers and Salcha Elementary schools goes against everything that stands for. Doing so marginalizes every single student and their families in those important remote locations of the borough. Furthermore, the district itself in Alaska continually prides themselves on preserving the unique lifestyle that Alaskans have and Alaskan Native history through education by teaching our children about them, which is extremely important to us as a state. By shutting down these 2 schools that are so much more than just schools in their communities and marginalizing their communities, how are we as Alaskans expected to preserve those histories? As a history major, this kind of kills my soul. This very well could impede the preservation of Alaskan history and the transfer of knowledge and traditions with rich Alaskan Native roots, the knowledge and history of these areas, and on how to live sustainably in rural areas. As a political science minor, this also kills my soul. It will impact those communities politically, as both schools serve as polling stations for voters. Then there's the obvious that schools themselves help help to educate students in these remote areas on American history and government. When they close schools, the borough must redistrict school zones. This is the political equivalent of gerrymandering. To cite and synthesize one of many studies, the difference between the two is that political gerrymandering reinforces a party's political power and reduces the voting power of minorities, while the gerrymandering of educational boundaries creates and worsens existing inequities surrounding access to educational opportunities and racial segregation and economic segregation within our public schools. As a parent and as an educator, I implore you to try and think a little deeper.
Thank you for your testimony. That brings us to our 1 hour time limit. Public testimony is now closed. And with that, the board will take a brief 5 to 10 minute recess, and then we will continue on with the rest of our agenda. Welcome back. The board is now back from recess, and we are going to continue on with tonight's agenda, jumping into our next item, which is the Borough Assembly Report. Liz Reeves Ramos, Borough Assembly member, will provide the Assembly Report, and Mayor Hopkins will provide an overview of how the school consolidation will affect the borough. Miss Liz Reeves Ramos, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay, this sounds weird, but okay, I think this is the first assembly update that I've given since November, so it's been 3 months, and in that time we've only had 3 regular assembly meetings, none of which had anything to do with the school district. So I don't have a ton to update you on. We organized, Mindy O'Neill is our presiding officer, Scott Crass is deputy presiding officer, and the thing that I think you'd be most interested to know is, while you guys are all in the throes of budget and it's taking a lot of your time right now, I know we don't start our budget process until April, but I'm going to give you the dates of our current budget work sessions. Monday, April 7th in the evening, I believe we're starting at 5:30. And then Monday, April 14th. And then if we need to, we will go into a Saturday session on Saturday, April 19th. And that is the end of my update to you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Is there any questions from the board at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your Borough Assembly report. And if you would like to kick it over to Grier Hopkins, our mayor, that'd be great.
Do I have to stay here?
You can step away if you'd like.
Which mic would you like me to use?
Either one.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Hopkins, and welcome. And the board is ready for your report.
Thank you very much, Madam President Burnett and members of the school board and administration and Colonel Cole, everybody here today. Thank you for having me on the hot seat today and providing me the opportunity to meet with all of you and let you hear a little bit about what we've discovered in the last several months as this process has moved forward and since I've taken office. So, first of all, I certainly do not envy any of you this decision that you have to go through. It's a real budget crunch. From my time in the legislature to now, I'm understanding of where you guys are at, how we got here, and the impact it has on all of you every night. So I also want to say, I am not here to sit here and say, don't close schools. I'm not here to say, don't go through this consolidation program. I understand the operating budgets, the year-to-year impacts that this has. I want to work at being a partner with all of you and the administration in this process so that we can go through this in the way that's going to be most beneficial for our entire community, allowing us to grow, allowing us to have that vision for the future together so we can start increasing student enrollment, get people back into the community, and find ways that we can work together on the small things, the big things, as we're looking at this right now and as we go into the future years working together and as the school district and the borough continue to exist in partnership. Excuse me. Want me to use that one? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll just switch.
Looks like you chose the wrong one.
Yep. 50-50 chance and lost. All right.
50-50.
Yeah. So I met with some of you last week, and one of the things we are trying to learn throughout this process is what the actual legal and tax implications are on our bonds. So fortunately, we are able to schedule a meeting with our bond counsel earlier this afternoon and finished at about 4:30. So this information is fresh on my brain, but also not fully digested yet as we look at, we understand what the questions we had were and how we can move forward. But we did learn that buildings, and this is something we did know, was buildings that have bonds on them, all those bonds that we voted as a community to improve our schools or build new schools with in the past, having schools that still have those bonds on them makes it much, much more inflexible and hard to do things with as we repurpose them. The opportunities we have to make partnerships in the community, whether it's nonprofit, public entities like a state or local government, the federal government does not count as one of those, or a nonprofit, is impacted on if they have bonds or not and when we can pay off those bonds. I'll touch on this later, but we're not allowed to pay off these bonds early. We can't take a lump sum and buy them down now. They're all government tax-free bonds, and so they're purchased on the private market by outside entities, and we're not allowed to pay them off early, or it would impact the profit margin for those entities that outside that have bought them. So those IRS tax implications have a bit to do with how much we would sell a school for or lease it for, and we're not allowed to exceed a 5% threshold of that bond sale overall, and they've been combined over the years. So that 5% bond sale is the price of the school, how much we lease it for, that sort of thing ends up, if we can avoid that cost, we then can avoid those tax implications that would reduce our budget that we have and the ability to fully fund or better fund our school district and the services that our borough employees provide and residents and children the school district enjoy so much. But again, I think this is something that we can work at overcoming if we work closely together, if we say, okay, what about this school or what about this school, and the order that they're also closed or given to the school board. And I understand you guys are working on that, so thank you, but I have some points on that a little bit later. The post-consolidation implications, schools with bonds, as I said in the previous slide, versus schools without bonds. Also one of the things I'll touch on also is where these schools are in the community. A lot of people have reached out to us already for interest in schools. I can do this or I can do that. Some of them we can't do with, some of them we have to sell at full market value to that entity, or some of them we can sell it at a reduced rate if the assembly wants to provide that as a government good. It's an assembly choice, not just mine. Learned that my deputy chief of staff is the civics teacher, so I remember my checks and balances. All of the schools so far that we have received, the vast majority of interest in is in the city proper, in the denser area of the central region you guys are looking at. I'm not saying in this program, I will not say which schools to close or not, but in terms of flexibility, we've received a lot more interest for those that are in the consolidated area, in the center of town versus the outlying areas, your Pro Creeks, Two Rivers, Weller, and Randy, and Salcha. Again, leased land, schools that are on leased land is very difficult, and you should have received an email forwarded from the superintendent a couple weeks ago with a spreadsheet from us that has a fair bit of information, which schools are on leased land, which ones are not. Right off the top of my head, schools like LAD and Tanana and Arctic Light, military DoD-related schools, are on Fort Wainwright land. Very difficult to do things with, as we are seeing with Anderson and Eielson right now. I won't not go into that. That would be 3 more slides, or at least. The zoning implications is not something to overcome, but it's something to take into consideration. We can always change zones on them, or they can get a conditional use permit. But there are still a number of schools from the closure in 2022 that we're trying to work with the school district to rezone, to understand the purpose of them, and that's just an obstacle we'd have to overcome. But it's a community interest. What is happening there? How are those schools used? Needs to be rezoned. Location, again, is looking at where you're prioritizing your schools and your closures so that we can repurpose them so it's a community good. Nothing, many things would be, how do I say this? Having schools sitting around our community that are blighted and not being closed are ripe for vandalism, ripe for looking like dilapidated properties that ruin morale and when they're right in front of you in a number of places, or on the outskirts of communities that people see, certainly does not drive interest in our town as we're working on trying to clean up junkyards around town. The order of buildings that are given is also something to take into grave consideration. Mr. Burgess mentioned in the work session last week, we are working, and I appreciate the administration and the school districts or school boards understanding that the order that you would give us, so it's not just 5 schools at once, or in this case 4 schools at once, is very important. But if we are given first off a school that does not have a bond on it, something that we could then turn around quickly on the free market and sell easier without the constraints and the IRS implications of the bonds on them. We can move quickly on that to get it back into a community purpose, get it reused, and move forward on it. And then giving us schools after that have bonds on them the next year or two, as you guys look down the pipe, is a way that would allow us to know, okay, this one's coming. Let's work with the community. Let's find somebody that we can repurpose these schools for. The last thing I want to do after, I guess, second to last thing I want to do after leaving one vacant would be to demolish a school. I'd much rather see it repurposed, and I think our community would like that. We're a community often held together by duct tape with our homes, and so let's make sure we can repurpose these schools and not demolish them. This is a list of buildings without bonds on them. These are the ones, and again, many of these are not on the list, and I do not expect them to be, but it is allow flexibility for you guys to look at the whole holistic approach across the district of all these schools. And you understand that most of them have bonds, but a fair number of them do not. Clearly, some of these are not school facilities. You got your nutritional services, that's on leased railroad land. Fifth Avenue Administrative Center, you're not a lot of savings here in closing this building, but it's something we could sell and repurpose. And people have said, hey, what about that admin center in terms of reutilizing it? But I understand that's not where you guys are looking at in terms of the bigger chunks you need to take out of this decision. It's just an example that there are a number of schools that do not have bonds and allow us the flexibility that we need to make this a smoother process. Capital improvement cooperation. The borough has a KIP MR, the capital improvement plan, and it's a fund. We give 10% of the borough budget by code into this capital improvement plan every single year and put it out into deferred maintenance projects within the borough facilities that we have, or new parks, new recreation facilities, things our community needs and loves. A new animal shelter topic came out of this. But that is separate from this discussion, although happy to go into it if you have questions. But that KIP is something, these are all borough facilities. All of the schools are, as you know, borough facilities. So I want to work with the administration and you as school board members on putting in all of the different projects that we have for deferred maintenance and capital improvements at the facilities that you have, so we can understand your needs and your priorities going forward, so we can help fund these schools. We can do this on a short-term basis. I am writing my capital improvement plan resolution to go forward to the assembly right now. It's a couple weeks away, but we could work to, target some of the schools that you guys have on your closure list. We can work with you to eliminate the capital improvement or the deferred maintenance on these schools in a way to take that decision off of your plate, so you can look at it more holistically, more subjectively if you'd like. Also, going forward in the future, making sure that the administration puts these onto our KIP and we are familiar with what the priorities would be, would allow us to not run into the sort of situation with the North Pole boiler where that project was in our KIP, but it was in what we call the beyond years. So more than 6, 7, 8 years down the line as the need be, but then all of a sudden we needed the boiler. And so that we moved that up the list quickly in a supplemental appropriation and used leftover KIP money to help fund that. That was an assembly action. So if there's projects that need to move forward, we can start chipping away at those in the long term as well as the short term as you make this decision. Currently, there are no projects on our KIP for school district facilities sooner than 6 or 8 years out. So we have funded everything except the improvements and repairs to Two Rivers School, which we have put off to the side, which is the one that is pressing right now for funding, but we put that off to the side for obvious reasons as you make your decisions, the hard ones that you have to make. So there's currently nothing there for us to help fund, whether it's a school like Hunter or Pearl Creek or Salter or Two Rivers, or something otherwise in the facilities, an Anween or a Lathrop or a West Valley. So if we're able to work with the administration on understanding where those are, we can forestall some of the improvement decisions you guys have to make in the future. Decision-making process. I encourage you to look at all options that are out there. One example that I don't have the backup for, but I would encourage you to reach out to the UAF administration, is that there's an interest in bringing Hutchinson back into the university and providing CTE positions and spots for students within the district. They have other interest in reducing their footprint. That's been public information for many years. It's an option that's out there for you to look at and to work with the administration on if that's something there. But putting all options on the table is a good idea. The administrative center, the ADC up here, is, you have space as you work at in taking your cuts out of the classrooms. Sometimes you end up targeting it here in this building, which also impacts student learning for everybody listening, public. But it is not directly in the classroom. As you have fewer people and do fewer things in this building, it is not a big savings to close it, but we can help by moving. We have an overflow of staff positions too. We could look at the possibility of moving people from our different offices that are overcrowded over to here. Currently, rural services that handles our road service areas is already housed in this building. That's not something unique to us. It's right over there on the first floor. So that's not foreign to us. We can work with that. It will not be a big impact, but if we can share utility costs, it certainly would solve a problem for us and maybe find a way to save you a few pennies as you go through the next step of your decision making this year after these closures and next. You all know as well as I do, these cuts, the closures and the consolidations that you guys will take are going to be irrevocable and irreversible decisions. The next step you've got is for the actual programs and the cuts to the classroom is going to be very, very difficult because those are the things that we deal with every day. But those, if and when money comes back, you can bring those back. These are not going to be ones that we can reverse and open back up for many of these schools as we close them and move them into the private or nonprofit sector. So we also, as Assembly Member Ruiz Ramos mentioned, have our budget process coming up as well. My target, my hope, my goal, and my dream is to find a way to ensure that this district does not see less funding than you guys received last year from us. So that means my goal and my hope would be to start off with 58 million that you received. But I encourage you, as the last bullet says there, please ask for what you need. Don't say, okay, he said 58 million, so we come in at 58 million. Ask for what you guys need. As I mentioned before, our checks and balances allows the assembly to overrule whatever I think is a good proposed budget and put forward a better budget or for the school district or for our community, whatever they see fit. They can raise and lower that amount. Ms. Ruiz Ramos mentioned our schedule, so I don't need to go over that. But it is the first week of April that I am putting out my proposed budget. That would come out in that. That's our code and statute requirements. We also have a minimum funding ordinance or resolution rather, that we're required to put forward that says the borough will not go below this amount. And we can in assembly actions, but in the often unfortunate chance that we do something we've never done before and do not have a budget passed at the borough by June 30th at the end of the fiscal year. At that point, whatever we passed in that resolution would be what you guys get automatically. So you don't sit there not getting funding from us. It's quite nice versus what the state situation is where you have to wait until they pass a budget. So you get that whether we pass a budget or not, assuming we pass a minimum funding resolution. I don't mean to sit here and lecture you on how to do this, but as I hear from many people in the community and the constituencies, please do this in a way that earns the public trust. I've heard from many people out there that getting the full data, seeing, the crosstabs and understanding your decision-making process is as important to many of us out there as we, have our heartstrings pulled by these impactful school closures. The decisions you make, how you make them is as important as what you make. So please work on that. Looking and listening to that input from out there and giving it full-throated, what's the word I'm looking for? Transparency and understanding that the options are on the table. You've heard from a number of Pearl Creek magnet schools. Salcha was considered as a charter school, so was Two Rivers. There are many Title I considerations that are out there. Options to draw new lines to bring in lower income students into other schools and things like that. What are other creative options? I urge you to make sure you look at and you guys take that into consideration more than just here. And I am happy. I want to make sure I offer, my ability and our administration's ability to meet one-on-one, to meet as a whole, to have work sessions, whatever we can do to be that partner in this process with you to make this as least painful for our community going forward. I want to be there to help you guys because this weight is on your shoulders now, but it's going to impact our entire community today and going forward. All of you ran and genuinely care about the students in this district and in our community, and that's that cannot be questioned. I value every one of your efforts and reasons that you're sitting here. So make sure these are student-centered decisions. Look at what's going to be the impact long-term in our community as we try to reverse that population decline, as we try to be an attractive place in our community. What is the way that you guys can make these decisions with subjective and objective criteria to move schools onto our on our desk and our table to be able to repurpose and refund, as well as be an attractive place. And I want to be that partner with all of you and understanding that we have timelines that we all have to adhere to, especially by code and statute, but we have the ability to to put all the data out there and make sure people understand what we're doing. So the heartstrings can be pulled, but the minds can at least understand where we are. Happy to answer any questions whatsoever after that. And sorry for probably your longest assembly comments to date.
At this time, do we have any questions from the board? Mrs. Hardy?
I have a few, so I can just start with one. Mayor Hopkins, you will be releasing your proposed budget coming up. Will that proposed budget include cuts to your own budget in order to fund our schools closer to the cap?
Ms. Hardy through the chair. Currently the cap's about $72 million, and the last year's funding was about $58 million. The assembly last year got it from 54 to 58 million by dipping into the fund reserve. We are certainly looking at ways we can trim, starting at our own office, to find that. One-time funds is not ideal what we can do, but as we try to increase that funding, the assembly and I have the ability to put forward projects and funding that, just like they did last year, that both pass a responsible sustaining funded budget, but also can use one-time funds to help alleviate costs as we make sure you guys don't receive less funds that we have than we have in the past.
Follow up? So you're saying you won't be proposing more funds, but we should at least expect even with what we got last year.
Ms. Hardy through the chair, if I can increase the education funding budget, that would be my goal even more. Absolutely. That's what I've said for years. I think that's important. I do not know what our new capital improvement dollars, I do not know what our new construction dollars are. And we just got the CPI last Wednesday. That was at 2.2%. The new construction is really going to be what drives our revenue cap. As you know full well, a lot of you here. Those numbers we're not going to know until closer to the end of the month. That would allow me to understand how much revenue we're going to be getting in from the district, and at the same time, what our lapse funds would be and what our reserve fund and things like that would be. So I can't promise what it would look like now, but the assembly was able to increase funding last year, and I want to work and partner with them and all of you to try to do that once again would be my hope and dream.
Ms. Maple.
I will have another one also, but if you want to just put me back in the queue. My first question, talking about the KIP projects, hearing, wanting to be able to work together to make sure that we're prioritizing, the right things before something becomes catastrophic. I'm curious and would be interested in how the borough would like that to be done, what that would look like, and the administration having, or the school district as a whole having a say in the priority of different projects. Because as I understand it now, we put forward our projects, but then are not a part of the conversation of prioritizing those projects. I think after the last meeting, looking at the 2026, the last one, it was dated in 2024, but I think it's budget year 2026 to 2030 or 2031. There's like 49 projects, I think, from the district. But of course that's how we could be involved in that evaluation of what gets prioritized.
Ms. Maple through the chair. Absolutely. So we did, I believe the previous administration, I don't want to speak for them, met with the school district, but to understand what the projects were, but then we did not the borough did not get a feel for which would be the priority of them, so they were out in the beyond years, as they're called on our KIP spreadsheet. So what I would propose and what I would promise would be to sit down with Dr. Minert and the maintenance department here and understand which are going to be those higher priority projects, so that we could move up something like the North Pole boiler into a, oh, this is an emergency, let's handle this right now. We're also looking at slightly reconfiguring the criteria for the KIP between now and the fall when that nomination process opens. Anybody in the community, any of the listening public out there, anybody is able to put forward a project that then is graded based on objective criteria and put forward to the assembly to move forward through our resolution. So it's an end of assembly decision about what gets funded that year. I would want to, in terms of being a partner, sit down with Dr. Minert and the administration and the maintenance department here to understand how we can prioritize those better, so we can know what they are. It's also starting with the State Department of Education major maintenance list. There are a lot of projects on there, but we can't go out and snag that and put it in there. So let's work with the administration to move some of those priorities up, because that's based on a formula and oftentimes not real life of an Arctic school district.
Follow up, or you put you back in the queue? All right. Then we will go to Ms. Julian and then back to Mrs. Hardy.
Thank you, President Burnett. Mayor Hopkins, thank you for coming tonight. Can you talk a little bit more? I wrote down some notes on the bond implications. So the buildings that have bond implications, am I understanding correctly that if a building is turned back to you that has a bond implication, that the purpose of that building then would be repurposed for local use, a nonprofit, another borough program, whereas a building without a bond could then be sold to a private entity more easily. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. Yes. If one of these schools on that list, we can move it more faster because we don't have to move it faster because we don't have to worry about the amount we sell it for, what the leftover bonds are, who we can sell it to, things like that. It can be more easily put onto the private sector, things like that, if they don't have a bond on them. That is correct.
Okay, and then I just have a follow-up. So we've talked a little bit in our budgeting process for these potential closures. Some of those buildings that we wouldn't turn over to you immediately, if they were to be closed, there's a cost that's still carried with that. And so if we hand over a building to you, and I know that this has come up in conversation with a lot of community members, but there is a concern that if we hand over a building to you that perhaps has a bond on it, the borough's costs would then increase. Your costs would increase because if you cannot repurpose it right away, you are then maintaining that empty building. Is that correct?
That's correct. Allison's costing us about $500,000 a year in utility costs.
Mrs. Hardy.
And this might be to the administration. So I remember, and I went back and looked, in June we passed a KIP that was our own KIP, and then in the email attached, we have Fairbanks North Shore Borough Capital Improvement Plan nominations, and it says that this list, both column 1 and column 2, are shared with the borough, and that includes Pearl Creek upgrades, things for ADC and lists. Is that given to the borough, and what's our process with making them aware of our capital improvement projects?
Through the chair. Yes, the borough is aware of the 49 projects submitted on that list, and while the district does have a say in terms of prioritizing where our projects are, we don't have a say in the final say in terms of how the borough prioritizes our projects. And I think that's where the real struggle from the school district side of things have come, is that we submit these projects, we prioritize them for the borough, but they're not picked up until 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And so very thankful for Mr. Hopkins' awareness of the process and our schools being underfunded in terms of capital improvements. There are millions and millions of dollars worth of capital improvement projects submitted in the borough's KIP, and so I look forward to working together to hopefully address some of those deferred maintenance issues that we have in our schools.
Ms. Maple?
I don't expect you to actually be able to give me a magic answer to my next question, but it's a question that I have come to. This is obviously just my second year on the board, and it's something that really was a big part of our budget conversation last year. And then it's come up with, in separate conversations with one assembly member this year. So, in your presentation, talking about asking for what we need, obviously the reality is we need 16 million more than than what we're expecting. My concern always comes back to, if we ask for what we need, that then we've tied, and then we don't get it, that we've tied our hands on what we can backtrack, right? That there's some things that we can walk back, there's some things that we can't. And that when it comes to our budget, honestly, what it sort of comes down to, if we ask for, last year it was, are we going to ask for, I don't even remember the number we started at, but over 70, and then, slowly pared it down painfully. But that if we had submitted for 70 and got 58, that 2 million at the end there would end up being PTR. And so I guess my magic question that can't quite be answered is, what do you suppose that the district can do in terms of asking for a number that we don't know, because of this way the system has been set up, which is, of course, none of anybody in this room's fault, what will actually come through and what risk we should be willing to take?
Ms. Maple, through the chair, sometimes I'm glad I'm sitting on this side of the microphone, and not your side of the dais in these discussions that you have to have for sure. As we get a more firm understanding of what new construction looked like in our borough, I'll have a better answer for what that amount would be that we have available for utilizing for services and for education here, and that should come in the next couple weeks. So that should hopefully give a better indication. I wanted to start off my magic number by saying 42, because it's the answer to everything. But I wish I also had a magic 8-ball so I could know what that number would be like. When you come to the assembly and ask for what you need, and give that case for it as they balance the using the budget that I've proposed and changing it so we can see the cuts to services and employees, or utilizing money that we have in other ways, I think that they would need to make that case for it. So I don't have an answer now, but as a partnership, as we continue to work forward, I'll come back here next week or the week after and have that further discussion so we can have a smoother transition, and our students, our parents, and our educators across the district are not hanging in the balance for waiting until our budget, because then, of course, you have to wait until Juno's budget, as the calendar is in reverse order, to make your guys' lives easy at all. The district is on a calendar budget cycle, the city is on a calendar budget cycle. We're on a fiscal year. That would make life a lot easier, but certainly would upset a lot of efforts and scheduling that we have. So hopes and dreams and answers to everything. So continue to work as a partner with you as we get closer to that budget number, and hopefully we can narrow that down for what our capacity would be looking like to fund what you guys need.
So we're going to go to Miss Carol Hubbard and then Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. Mayor Hopkins, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you clearly, and I'd like you to clarify just with Mrs. Hardy's question and kind of with even Ms. Maple's question. Is the borough willing to cut their own budget to properly fund education?
Ms. Carol Hubbard, through the chair, if I can cut it for $16 million to find that and still support the community's entities that they have, or the services that they provide, that are also important for providing a growing community, the assembly and I can work on that budget together. We're already working on finding efficiencies within my own department. in the mayor's office to reduce our costs. So I'm trying to find all of the deficiencies. We meet with our CFO tomorrow to start our budgeting discussion. I have meetings with every single director coming up. I can promise you, not many of them have come forward and said they're already understaffed and have had huge hits over the last several years to the services that they provide as the community asks for more and more. So we will be finding ways to tighten the belts across the board. But I would be remiss if I'd say there's $14 million worth of efficiencies to find. But there are always ways to find them, and we're looking for them, and already starting with that in our office, finding ways to reduce the impact on the taxpayers so we could put it into things that people also use every day.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burgess.
Well, Ms. Maple kind of stole my question, but I did want to just elaborate on that, ask for what you need, and because I would love to be able to do that, but again, the way that our budget cycle works, we have to, and the timing of it, and we have to guess at how much money we're going to get from the state and the borough, and then we have a timeline that prevents us from, if we overestimate what we're getting and we don't cut enough, then there are some cuts that we won't be able to make. So just to help the public understand that timeline, I just wanted to elaborate there. But I have a different question, and I've seen some surveys go out and some information about the borough putting together the 20-year plan, and I'm forgetting exactly what you're calling it, but I'm wondering, I haven't had a chance to review any of that, but what role does education play in that plan? Is there anything about supporting the school district as a foundation of economic stability for the borough?
Thank you, Mr. Burgess, for asking me that question. I presented today at the Chamber of Commerce about the Fairbanks Borough's comprehensive plan. As a second-class borough in state statute, we're required to create a roadmap for our next 20 years and update it every 20 years. Last time was 2005, so we're working on that right now. If you go to fnsb.gov/comp plan, 2P, COMP, PLAN. We're asking members in this community to take that very survey that Mr. Burgess is asking if it has anything in terms of education-oriented questions. A lot of the things are like, would you recommend people move to Fairbanks? What are the important things that you want to prioritize? Obstacles, challenges, and successes we have. Question number 13 is education. In your experience, how do you rate the overall quality of local education and learning opportunities? Slide it between 0 and 10 for your feelings about that. So we have that right in there in terms of your feelings for education and the importance of it going forward. All of you know better than I, but for the listening public out there, we don't give the school district a line item. We don't have the ability to line item your budget. We give you a lump sum, and you guys are able to handle it as you are, and you write it based on your priorities. So, I think it is part of that comprehensive plan. This is the start of that process. It's a 2-year process. There's a number of open houses coming up in the next couple of weeks too, to make sure the community voices education as a priority. It's not so much driving how we write our budget or fund different things, but it does help our department and drive the decisions our departments and the decisions they make as they bring forward new ideas, new subdivisions, new energy policies, targeting healthcare, targeting education, things like that. So it is a part of that process, yes.
Follow up. As you continue with that process, do you see opportunities for collaboration with the school district?
Mr. Burgess, absolutely. If there's a way that we want to make sure we sit down with you guys and put that input in, we are reaching out to students across the district already at high school. to make sure they have input into it. It's available to everybody in the public. This is a perfect advertising opportunity for fnsb.gov/comp plan. Say it 3 times and maybe we'll get a couple more survey responses. We're shooting for nearly 1,000. So yeah, I would be honored to sit down with the school district and the members of the board in a public meeting or not, and discuss how we can include education in that process. We got 2 years left on it, so we can certainly make sure the community's desire and hopes for education are put into that. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Miss Julian and then Mrs. Hardy.
Thank you. Mayor Hopkins, and, I thank you for bringing up, I think we're having kind of 2 different conversations right now because we are venturing into the world of budget conversations. However, we're also looking at this facility footprint. I want to reflect back on one of your first slides, which was acknowledging that we need to move forward with this. There's enrollment realities that are also driving this beyond budget. So that's where my brain goes. And when I look at the consolidation framework that was presented to the board from the administration on the 6th, on the 7th slide, really shows shows how that framework flowed. And the recommendation is based on that framework. Building status is one of the key things that I think have come up in several of the recommendations. So that is building condition, status of major systems, borough input and reutilization. Of course, that's what the buildings, and then alternative building use. But I really look at those first 2 bullet points, building condition and status of major systems. When I'm hearing you tonight talk about the KIP, so the capital improvement projects and the money that's there, to the extent that you're able to elaborate on what type of funding might be available for projects and the timing of that funding availability for, again, building conditions and status of major systems. And it's difficult for me to not think that the recommendation may be impacted if we're able to get a little bit more data from the borough on funding opportunities for those major facility improvements. Can you speak to that at all?
Ms. Julian, through the chair, I'll elaborate as best I can on it for sure. So by code, the mayor in his proposed budget, our proposed budget, puts forward is required to take 10% of the revenue we take and put it into the KIP, the KIP MR it's called, maintenance reserve. And we then propose that money is about 10 to 12 million a year. We need to leave some in it throughout the process for things that pop up, emergencies throughout the year. That's where we get most of our maintenance emergency dollars from. So I put forward a resolution to the assembly, and then they ultimately rank the projects as we move forward and put them in place. So I'll be putting forward that resolution. I want to say the first meeting in February for the assembly. I believe that's it. It might be the committee of the whole. But it can always be amended by the assembly and changed, especially going forward. In the fall, it opens up for nominations from entities, organizations, and individuals in the public to put forward ideas. Everything across the board has been submitted in there. Making sure that we partner with the school district so that we can tweak the criteria so that those borough facilities that are housing our students is moved up in the rank, and the understanding of the priority that the district sees every day as their maintenance staff work in those buildings and understand the needs that they have are moved higher is something I want to find a way so that we can listen more subjectively versus just the quick ranking of those projects. As Dr. Minor was talking about, the current system we have pushed things further back. So working with the school district would allow us to tweak that criteria moving forward with the new reality that we live in.
So is there an opportunity, knowing that we're kind of in this situation right now where we're going to have to potentially, we're making a decision on school closures it's right now proposed for the February 4th timeline. You mentioned a fall timeline as to kind of when we can start that process, is there an opportunity for us to start partnering now and start talking about what type of funding is available now from the KIP to potentially put forth, to address certain projects at certain buildings? And again, it's what's going through my mind is, with this information, would that change the recommendation that we have in front of us? I don't know that answer.
Ms. Julian, through the chair, I don't know that answer either. That would be if you guys want to look at, in your decisions, the status of schools and how you can eliminate maintenance and deferred maintenance costs from those 5 schools as a criteria for your selection. But I am open and willing to have that conversation. Pretty busy tomorrow, but maybe Friday. But like start that discussion as soon as I can, so we can talk to the assembly about it. We can make room in a KIP resolution that I have going forward, but ensuring that our borough facilities and you guys are well maintained, and you guys have the full ability to make decisions that you need with the most broader amount of data that you can is something I would love to be a partner with. Like I said, the assembly ultimately ranks it. But I can put forward ideas, and if there's a school that we can say we'll chip away at this deferred maintenance over the next, I can promise 3 years, then certainly we can look into that. It would replace other community needs projects as we go about it, but it doesn't mean there aren't options for us to work on it.
Mrs. Hardy.
I want to start by saying all of this respectful of that you are in your first few months in this position, and you, like us, inherited things that are not of your making. But when you're talking and you talk about finding efficiencies in your own budget, respectfully, we haven't been cutting efficiencies for years now. Like at this point, we're cutting off limbs.
Yes, ma'am.
And I mean this respectfully, but what has been cut from the borough's budget in the last 5 years? What are you cutting? Years before I even got on this board, came to the Borough Assembly and begged, fund us more, fund us to the cap, only to have resolutions passed for the bare minimum. A budget is really a list of values and priorities. So I'd like to encourage you to reflect on your values and what you say you value about public education, and reflect that in your proposed budget. Cuts are difficult to make. I've been on this board for 3 years and I've known nothing but cuts. But it's been this board making them, and I encourage the assembly and the borough to look and start making some hard cuts so they can help keep us out of the catastrophe that we're in right now.
Ms. Hardy, through the chair, yes, you are unequivocally correct. I've watched it for the last 10 years in my previous life before this, the impacts that it has on students, on staff, and on all 7 of you up here and the entire community out there at large. And it's been devastating and hard. I strongly agree, and I could not agree more that budgets are moral documents, and how we fund them is essential. And I look forward to partnering with all of you in the administration to put forward a moral document that can help our community, our students, and our community overcome this and grow. So absolutely, I could not agree more with those statements. And I've said them myself in the past because they are facts. Thank you.
I'm going to put myself into the queue. I do have a couple questions for you, and I do support Mrs. Hardy's statements. Sitting on this board for 3 years, cutting schools, this will make 9 in 6 years, one of which I have cut myself, 5 which could very well happen. And it would be nice to see not only the borough, but the state as well, making some cuts where it need to be cut so that education can be funded. But my questions for you, lean more on this claim from Eielson Air Force Base. You say that costs you around $500,000. From our budget presentations when we had this discussion, the cost to run the building was just under $500,000. So I have a hard time seeing that would still cost you $500,000 to keep open, heated, and with minimal lighting. From our budget projections that we got, my number is $275,000 with the heat turned down and the lights turned down. And so I would like to ask that if you have information that says it is $500,000, that is forwarded to the board so that we can see that. And if there is not that $500,000, if it is in that more $275,000 mark, It would be nice if the borough could redistribute that, in the utilities, maybe back to the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. That's another area where maybe some funding could come from. So the board would very much like to see that.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett, through the chair. Absolutely understand that. It was the amendment to the budget that the administration gave when we received Eielson from the district, and it was a $500,000 increase at that time. So that's the number that I'm running with. As I meet with my CFO tomorrow, I'll look for where that specifically is and what that has cost. My public works director will also have that at his fingertips. That number might have changed in the last 12 months as we understand what the overall costs are. But that was the number that they put in for the amended budget moving forward.
Okay, and like I said, our number is $275K, so I would like to see that. And then my second question to you is actually more of a statement question. First off, I want to say it's been really great to see you out there and advocating for Pearl Creek and spending a lot of time with those families. And I was just curious if you had any intentions or time on your hands to make rounds over at the other schools that are on this closure list.
Ms. Burnett, through the chair, absolutely. I've got an open house tomorrow night for my own for a subdivision, so I can't make it to the listening session at Lathrop tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow night. I was out of town for family medical reasons last week when we had some other closures, so it has been on my schedule and my calendar for every chance that I can make it. And so that's absolutely my goal and my hope. I have not, I've made sure in my discussions with people that I cannot prioritize different schools and things like that within our community. It's important when I make these decisions and have these discussions, it's an overall borough impact, as all of you do too with your school district. So yeah, I've been trying to make those, and my plan is for that there as I make as many of these meetings as I can as well. Yes, ma'am.
Much appreciated. Thank you. At this time, are there other questions from board members? Mr. Burgess.
Just touching on that, ask what you need for again, because I wanted to make the point that that we absolutely need every penny that you can give us at this point. With years and years of cuts, laying off, I think something like 200 staff over 5 years, and losing valuable programs that the community values, and now looking at consolidating several schools that will have huge impacts on the communities centered around those schools. We absolutely, whatever our budget number says, whatever we base our budget off of, based on that expectation of the money we receive, we need anything beyond that you can give us, absolutely. Because we would like to be in a position where we can reinvest in our schools, and this consolidation plan or whatever closures we end up making, whether it's a modified plan or not, this is representing the last of what we can cut before we drastically affect the education of every single student in this district. And so on that note, and I hope you don't interpret this as a hard question, but I've seen some statements in the newspaper and in your letters that you send out suggesting that you might have to make cuts to the education budget if we do what we have to do and turn over schools to the borough in order to offset those costs that turning over those buildings would create. And so I want to ask you genuinely, is that still something that you see as being necessary? Or is there a way that you can get around that? Because again, the district needs every penny that we can get from you, whether or not we consolidate these schools.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess, through the chair. Start with that. Like I said, you guys have already forced to make cuts that are impacting student learning. It's not starting now. You guys have had to do that already, and it's been hard. And like I said, sometimes I'm happy I'm on this side and not over there because of those decisions you guys have to make. School boards are well known across the country for being some of the hardest seats to sit in, for sure. So as you guys make those, I commend you and laud you on those decisions. In terms of the operating costs for schools that I was mentioning in those, the ability to turn those schools around and get them repurposed and get them back into the community, as I mentioned through here, whether it's schools with bonds on them, schools that don't have bonds on them, where they are, the time, the order that they are handed over, would allow me to make sure that we don't have to balance school funding with utilities on closed schools as they sit there, because that's not what we want to see for a community nor for a budget. So partnering with you guys and understanding what that implication would be for the order of the schools would make sure it does not come to pass on that.
Thank you.
Any other, Ms. Julian?
Thank you. I'm going to preface this with a really short story that I heard from a parent at one of our listening sessions. And that story is that this parent was pleading for their school, which is on the list. And that parent had a child who had been in an extended learning program. And that parent started crying and said, "So are you telling me that if we close my child's school, that you might be able to invest in all of our schools and bring back ELP, and that my child might get an ELP program at another school?" And that parent was crying. And that parent was understanding the implications of the decisions that we're going to have to make on a community, the implications on their own child, and the sacrifice that that parent at that moment said, "I guess that's okay." And that's a heartbreaking thing to sit across the table from a parent. And all of us have been sitting across the table and across the phone lines and across the room from that. So my question is, when we talk about priorities, you said something that that really resonated with me when you ran, which was you hope to be remembered as the education mayor. That would have been one of the proudest things that you can wear. So my question is that I'm asking you to do everything that you can to fund us sustainably, to work on this timeline, and to help us raise the bar for every single student in this district so we can ensure all families that the decisions that we value education, and we know that it's the root of a strong community.
Any other questions from Mayor Hopkins from the board at this time? Seeing none, Mayor Hopkins, thank you so much for your presentation and for answering all the questions of the board and being on the firing line. We absolutely appreciate it and hope you have a good night.
Absolutely. President Burnett, members of the board, administration, thank you everybody for your time and the work you do here.
Moving on, next in our agenda will be advisory member reports and comments. Do we have any reports from Mr. Shannon?
Yeah, so as of right now, we're just kind of getting back into it, back from winter break. And currently over at North Pole and a couple other schools, we have some dances, whether it's senior ball or like a winter dance thing. We haven't had a regional student council meeting since before the break. And at that meeting before the break, we made Christmas cards and holiday cards for a bunch of organizations such as the North Pole Fire Department, the Door, and a bunch of other organizations too. Our next meeting will be on January 29th. And as for some student opinions, I know the phone policy is the first draft has come out for that. And I was talking to Dr. Meinert a little bit, and he's saying that that'll probably be like a little bit later down the line. But I'm going to gather some more opinions about that, and I'll share those with the board, share those with the administration to see what we can do. For the elephant in the room, school consolidations, obviously a lot of students have a lot of different opinions about that. I've heard a lot from my school, North Pole, but I'm gonna definitely branch out over the next few weeks, talk to people from different schools, talk to people from even elementary schools and middle schools to see what they think about it. And ultimately, with that information, representing the students, make an informed decision. So I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Miss Charlie.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that we had a teacher, Jesse Hensel, get up and speak about his partnership with our FNA Community Service Elders Program. And I think because of the sake of time, he wasn't able to elaborate on that partnership that he has built over the past 9 years. He has been working with our Elders Program. They've been berry picking, fishing, storytelling. They've explored Creamer's Field. They harvest celebration of traditional foods. They do fiddle music and fiddle dancing. They've had a friendship celebration, dog mushing, honoring our children every April event. So they do barbecues, planting potato baskets, planting the garden, and for 2 years in a row held a culture camp. And I just wanted to thank him for really building this relationship. I've personally gone to some of these events, and it was really touching to see the kids interact with our elders. And not only that, it was nice to see so many parents leave work and come and participate also during their busy day. They were engaged in what was happening in this partnership and whatever cultural activity was going on. And it was really, really nice to see that. And I don't know what's going to happen with Pearl Creek, but I really hope that, like he said, that he can sustain this partnership wherever, he may end up. And I just saw it firsthand, and it was very touching to see that. And so I just really want to extend my thank you to him and the principal for supporting that for 9 years now. Also, I wanted to add that I've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails on FNA's stance on the closure of Hunter and how we feel about it. I understand almost 50% of the kids are Alaska Native. That is not including the multi-race. So I would assume or guess that at least more than half of the kids are Alaska Native. We know that and we understand that. I don't want to speak prematurely on where my board stands on the closure of Hunter. We do meet next week. We will be talking about it. I did invite Luke to that meeting. I know he's going to be traveling to Juneau at that time. So before the next meeting, I will know how the board feels about that, and I can relay that message. But I know Jesse left, but I just really want to tell him Bessie for everything he's done with our elders. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Charlie. Question, Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if board members would be invited to attend your FNA board meeting, and if so, could you let us know the time?
Definitely.
Fantastic. Okay. Colonel Cole.
Sure, I'll jump on board too. Thank you. Happy New Year. It's good to see everybody here. So whatever decision the board winds up making next month, at Fort Wainwright, we know a transition is going to happen next school year. My school liaison officer spoke earlier about a transition support group that we're doing between us and Allison with the administration, as well as some school administrators will be invited as well to sort of sit on that board. And while we're the military, we're really looking for military connected students. We firmly believe whatever we come up together in our working groups and recommendations, that whatever we recommend, while it seems to be selfishly focused on military connected students, these are probably some great recommendations for the school district as well. But transitions are going to happen next year. So I've asked my team to go back and take a look at the distribution in the funding, potential funding for additional military family life counselors for the schools. Because either kids are getting a new cohort of kids coming in, or children may be going to another school. So there will be probably some transitional behavior adjustments there. So we're looking at that as well, to put some more military family life counselors into the schools as well. Knowing my military population and been in the military for a while and have had kids through all ages of school, I predict our homeschooling population in the military communities will probably increase. So we're also looking at opportunities for our programs on the installation as well. We've already started working with Best Homeschool, with having resources available through our child and youth services for having Best Homeschool and homeschool military connected families have opportunities and locations on the installation with our youth gyms, our new aquatic center, our library, which was just renovated, to have some homeschool locations on the installation as well. And so we're looking at that. It doesn't help the board with decisions, but we do know a transition will happen with kids next year. The military does not move fast with budgeting either. So we have to lean forward as well to try and predict the future and at least set some conditions as we continue to move forward in this process. So that's on the school side of the house. Fort Wainwright does have a lot of visitors right now. In the next few days, you will see a lot of visitors moving on the roads down to the Delta Junction area. If Mr. Dorn was here, I would tell him, yes, we've coordinated with Alaska State Troopers and the Department of Transportation. We're only on the roads when they give us permission. They give us time windows when we can be on the road. We drive slow, so we may be on the road longer than when they tell us to be on the road. But for everyone, the roads will be a little bit busy between here and Delta Junction the next couple of days. And then a couple of weeks later, they'll be busy on the way back. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Cole. Any questions from board members? Seeing none. Moving on, we will go into board committee reports. Do any board members have committee reports to share at this time? Mr. Burgess?
Thanks. The curriculum committee met one of these days, January 6th, I believe. No, it was the 9th. Anyway, it was a Thursday. Time is difficult, but we got through some updates from the administration on several updates to the draft curriculum that has been worked on, and I think we're at a pretty good spot on all of them. The board can expect to start hearing recommendations. We haven't voted to recommend any yet, but that's going to be at the next meeting. But we, I think, got to a pretty comfortable place for everything except the agriculture CTE curriculum, which should also come up at the next meeting. So just a heads up to be expecting several memos. It was a lot of work that the committee and the administration put into all of these curricula. And I just wanted to say again, thanks to the committee and to the administration for going through this process, engaging with the feedback that we got from public comments, and for the administration to really thoughtfully listen to recommendations of the committee and come up with a product that we can all get behind. So thank you again to both the curriculum committee and to the administration. And after our next meeting, the board can expect to see some memos recommending these curricula, and that's it. Probably should have written that down ahead of time.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Mrs. Hardy.
The Diversity Committee met last week, and update, we have 2 committee members assisting on North Pole Middle and then North Pole High School hiring committees for their principals. And we had Ms. LaPlante come, and she gave a great presentation where I learned a lot about our current principal hiring process, the questions used, and the committee is going to come up with questions around diversity to add, but they were already some fantastic questions. So that is already going great. Then next meeting in February, February 19th, we will be hearing from, I believe, someone in HR about what we currently do to assist individuals who are new to our community that are hired by our district. So J1 visas are just even people coming from out of state. And one of the priorities that the Diversity Committee set this year was to develop a hiring guide for employees and principals for people hired from out of state, ways that we can help them feel more welcome and prepared to face any roadblocks as they transition to living in our community. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Miss Loa Carroll Hubbard.
Thank you, Mrs. Burnett. I just want to report that the Family Engagement Committee tried to meet, and we did not have a quorum, so we were unable to meet, and we are going to reschedule. But we have Mrs. Averl from Denali Elementary, and we have Mr. Winford from West Valley coming to share what they do for family engagement at their schools. And so I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we can get something on the schedule soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carol Hubbard. Any other board members with reports? Seeing none at this time, we will move on into the president's report. And tonight, give me a second here. So first, I want to start by saying good evening to everyone, and to those that are sticking around right now. Thank you. Seriously, we appreciate you being here and in the audience. I also want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Mrs. Bedford and Mrs. Jennings for welcoming me to Hunter and Midnight Sun Elementary Schools. Thank you both for taking the time to show me your schools and share insights about your communities. I am also looking forward to spending tomorrow morning at Two Rivers and learning more about the wonderful work happening there. On a lighter note, I am thrilled that this weekend, Lathrop High's Music Club will be presenting Mean Girls. It starts this Thursday and runs through February 1st. It promises to be an incredible performance. It's guaranteed to be fetch. Please show your support for our talented students. I will always try to make fetch happen. I just want you to know. Now, I'd like to address a topic that has been at the forefront of many minds recently: school closures and the board's process regarding these changes. Last spring, faced with a significant education funding shortfall and the need for substantial budget cuts, the majority of the school board made the difficult decision to postpone closing elementary schools. Our goal was to create a thoughtful consolidation plan that prioritized community involvement, thoroughly evaluated all scenarios, and provided families, students, and educators with more time to adjust to potential changes. To support this effort, the district invited community members to form focus groups. These groups, which met throughout the summer and fall of 2024, provided valuable feedback and helped shape the framework for a school consolidation plan that has now been presented to the board. This proposed plan includes consolidating 5 schools, as many of you are aware. It also redistricts elementary and middle schools. The board's role is to carefully weigh this recommendation alongside public testimony, emails, the many phone calls and conversations with community members that we are currently having. Every piece of input we receive is important, and we are committed to asking all the necessary questions to make the best possible decision. We recognize the profound impact that these changes will have. The district's financial stability is at stake, and while we strive to minimize the disruption to students, we acknowledge that the effects will be absolutely significant. Your input through these emails, through your phone calls, through all of your conversations that you have been having with us has been invaluable as we navigate these next coming challenging weeks. I'd like to take a moment to share a community perspective piece co-authored by my fellow board members, Bobby Burgess, and Morgan Julian. Even with the $7 million savings that closing 5 schools may produce, and the estimated $3 million that may be saved by shifting custodial services, the district still faces an additional estimated $6 million budget shortfall this year. And what's most concerning is that this estimated shortfall is a relatively optimistic forecast. This funding projection assumes revenue from the state and the borough remains at the same levels as they did last year. However, the governor's proposed budget does not include the $680 base student allocation equivalent one-time funding that the bipartisan legislature had approved. Whether or not the recommended school consolidation plan is accepted in part or in full by this board, the district will need to make additional cuts that are detrimental to delivering a quality education to all FNSBSD students. In addition, last year's local funding included $4 million in one-time funding that was outside of the borough's operating budget, and the school district was told to not count on that money again. On top of this, in the News Miner, our new borough mayor stated that if the district closes schools and transfers the buildings to the borough, his budget might propose reducing school funding to offset the additional cost to the borough, thereby diminishing that $7 million savings the district is working on. Our situation is critical. We are facing a structural deficit and are working tirelessly to minimize harm to students and educators, while school closures are incredibly challenging. Our district and community can navigate these changes together. However, addressing the broader funding challenges requires advocacy at the state and borough levels for increased education funding. As we move forward, I encourage us all to approach this process with a spirit of collaboration and optimism, as hard as that may seem. While the idea of school closures is very difficult, we have an opportunity to build stronger, more unified communities. Let's lead with kindness and positivity, setting an example for our students and showing them the strength of a community that comes together in challenging times, the strength of the Golden Heart. Thank you for your continued support and engagement. Together, we can work towards solutions that prioritize the well-being and future of our district students. Lastly, I will end by making the public aware that next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the 29th through the 31st, Dr. Miner, myself, and Miss Maple will be headed to Juneau to advocate for education funding and to advocate for our schools. We will be meeting with legislators and the governor, and we look forward to this meeting as it comes at a very crucial time in our district. At this time, I would take any questions from the board. Ms. Maple.
It's a leading question, but who is paying for us to go to Juneau?
We are, not the district, as in the district is paying. 2 board members will be traveling through AASB's travel mileage. 2 board members are traveling on their own dime. We are costing the district $0 with this trip. Thank you for the question, Ms. Maple. Any other questions? Thank you, and that will now take us into our superintendent report. Dr. Meinert, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, President Burnett. I'd like to thank the community for those that filled out our most recent strategic planning survey that asked the community about our strategic planning initiatives that we've been working on. We had over 1,000 responses, with 183 of those being students. And so would like to thank Mr. Shannon for his efforts with increasing student voice. That's something that we're really striving to hear more from students and include them in decision-making processes. And so it was great to see our students come out and fill out that survey in such a big way this last go-around. The local National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the district are proud to sponsor this year's 2025 Black History Month contest. We invite all K-12 students to participate in the annual contest. This contest is an opportunity for students to showcase their knowledge, encourage the study of Black history, and show excellence and creativity. This year's theme is African Americans and Labor, and entry submission deadline is March 3rd. If you'd like to find out more, there is a link on the front page of our district website that will provide more information. There will be another school consolidation listening session tomorrow evening at Lathrop High School starting at 6 p.m. in the library. Thanks to those that participated in last week's community conversations and listening session out at North Pole. The structure of the evening includes a 20-minute presentation from administration to go over some of the high level of school consolidation and talk about the enrollment challenges and budget challenges that the district has been facing. We'll then have 3 20-minute breakout sessions that include 4 options. One option is roundtables with school board members that'll be in the library to hear your questions and concerns over the school consolidation plan. There'll also be a breakout session for our budget. Mr. DeGraw, our Chief Operations Officer, can provide information on the challenges that we've been facing with our budget and answer questions you may have. Mr. Hinton will be available for a breakout session on transportation and redistricting, which served to be a popular one last week. And then lastly, there's a breakout session on educational services and how they will be improved through consolidation. And so we're hopeful that the community will come out to that listening session at Lathrop tomorrow evening as we continue this community process for school consolidations. I'd like to thank the incredible generosity of our community in paying off all of our student meal debt over winter break for first semester. We had over $27,000 of unpaid meals from first semester, and we were able to zero out that balance with an incredible amount of generous donations from our community. We do encourage parents to monitor their students' meal accounts. You can do that through PowerSchool and School Cafe. As their students' meal accounts become too large and have large balances, donation funds are not guaranteed going forward, and so we want to make sure that parents are monitoring that closely. If your household's financial situation has changed since last semester, whether that's due to a job loss, income adjustment, or increase in household size, you are encouraged to submit a new meal application, even if you were previously denied. A new application could qualify your students for meal benefits at your school. Our district is partnering with the Alaska Association of School Boards to conduct this year's School Climate and Connectedness Survey. This is a statewide survey taken by students, staff, and families. The survey measures the perceptions of each school's climate, including the engagement of students, staff, and families. Our climate survey will open next Monday, and there'll be more information that goes out to students, staff, and families about it, and it closes on February 21st. We're excited about the move to AASB's survey. While we've done climate surveys in the past, we haven't participated in the Alaska Association of School Boards climate survey for some time. And this will provide us comparative data with other districts in Alaska, which I think will be very useful because previous data was not comparable necessarily with other districts in Alaska. And so we're looking forward to that survey being conducted and encourage those of you that get it to fill that out. Some good news as we continue with our reading initiative. We've concluded our winter benchmark reading assessment in class for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade, and we continue to see improvements across all of our grade bands. Kindergarten students, as expected, made a significant 25% increase in the number of students moving from not proficient to proficient or advanced. As we've heard before from our teaching and learning department, many of our kindergarten students here in Fairbanks and Alaska don't come in with necessary skills to show proficiency in that fall assessment, and so there was great growth for that winter benchmark. At the 1st grade level, we made a 2% gain. In the 2nd grade level, we made a 5% gain, and if you remember from past conversations, the 3rd grade is a little trickier to determine a percentage increase because if students at the 3rd grade level show proficiency on that first assessment, they don't retake the assessment. But we did have 100 students from the fall to the winter benchmark either become proficient or advanced, which is great growth. And so this is all based on the amazing work that our educators are doing in our school. We continue to show this growth, and I think it's important not to take this lightly, in that all growth is amazing growth, and it's because of the hard work that we're doing in very challenging times. And so I just thank our educators for continuing to show up and do that work and provide necessary interventions for our students so that they can show not only proficiency on the exams, but really how this makes lifelong impacts on their ability to go through school and be successful in life. So some great data there. In future meetings, we'll bring Mr. Shane Beam and Kate LaPlante back to do an overview of that winter benchmark and share some map assessment data as well. And then I'd like to close similar remarks to what we've heard tonight in terms of advocacy. The legislative session did begin today. We encourage parents and community members to join us in advocating for public education. One of the things, as I've met with legislators prior to session, is that they are calling on Fairbanks. They want to hear more from Fairbanks families and the community in terms of how the impacts of inadequate education funding is impacting our school district and the community. I'd also like to say I encourage you to reach out to the mayor's office here in the borough and the borough assembly. They are a part of this funding challenge that we've been experiencing here in Fairbanks. And as the mayor stated tonight, there are places that the borough can find savings and allocate that funding to the school district. And so I look forward to continuing to partner with newly elected Mayor Hopkins and the Assembly to try to close that budget deficit that we have and get closer to the cap that the borough could fund the district to. So that concludes my remarks for tonight, and happy to answer any questions for the board.
Thank you, Dr. Miner. And thank you for highlighting the positivity in our district right now. It's really great to see growth happening in our district, and it really truly is a testament to our educators. And I look forward to the winter benchmark. I think those results are going to be great to see. And then I just kind of wanted to go off of what you said about advocacy. If you don't know how to advocate, please reach out to any of us board members. We'll help you. We'll help you get out there and get the information to how to advocate. Is there any questions from the board? Mr. Burgess.
I guess I'm filling in for Tim here. Mr. Dorn.
We miss you, Tim.
Regarding that growth, I agree. I thank you for sharing these positive things and for continually highlighting the amazing work that our educators do in this district. Can that growth that you discussed be sustained in our district without additional funding?
I think that's, I don't know, is my mic on? Can you, no? The green light is indicated. Okay, we'll try. How about this one? Test.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. Great question, Mr. Burgess. It will be a challenge to continue to see the growth that we've experienced if class sizes continue to increase and the supports that we have around students continue to decrease. And so I really do feel strongly that if the state legislature and specific legislators want to see increases in outcomes of students, then they need to invest in places that are working, which is the Alaska Reads Act and the work that we're doing with our students. They oftentimes call for accountability. Well, they've made this an accountable system. They've created a framework for districts to use, and we've proven that we can step up to the job and educate our students. But it does become more challenging over time as class sizes continue to increase and the supports around students continue to decrease. So we are calling on the legislature to pass a meaningful BSA increase, which will help reading proficiencies, as well as targeted funding for the Alaska Reads Act, which we currently don't enjoy.
Any other questions from the board for Dr. Miner? Ms. Dulian.
Thank you. thank you so much for talking about growth as well. I think that that is incredibly important. One of the questions, and I think maybe a concern that we've heard from the community in general is uh, understandably a parent looking at the new school that they might be redistricted in, or if there's child's school, or if a family's looking at the children that are in their family, their school, potentially on the closure list and moving to a new school. What I've seen a lot of people do is go right to test scores. And in the fall, you did a really good piece. Thank you again for writing that about growth. Can you talk a little bit more about the growth and about why you might recommend that as a measure of or an indicator of what those schools are actually doing, and and maybe not just look at test scores?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel strongly that growth is the indicator that the community and the legislature should be looking at. And test scores are certainly one part of that. We want to see student outcomes on test scores continue to increase, whether that be Alaska Star, NWE MAP, or M-Class. But we have to meet our students where they are, and really we're looking for students to move from, if they're below proficient, to proficient, and move from proficient to being advanced. And so in test scores specifically, we want to continue to see that growth, and it doesn't do us any good to set an artificial marker that says 100% of students will meet this benchmark by such and such a date. We want to set benchmarks that are achievable by students and schools and districts that encourage growth, that encourage our students to continue to achieve for additional proficiency levels. And so that's what I continue to advocate for. In terms of other metrics that we could look at, I think attendance is a big one. We've continued to improve our attendance here in the district. We're hopeful that attendance will improve next year or this year above pre-pandemic levels. We improved our graduation rates last year by almost 3%, which marks an all-time high for the school district. And we improved in climate survey data across the district as well last year, even in very challenging times. Students, families, and staff were feeling supported in their home attendance neighborhood schools. And we want to continue to support students and staff so they feel safe within our schools. And so really it is taking a holistic approach at what our schools offer our students. And I continue to have these conversations that all of our schools are amazing schools here in Fairbanks. You know, I would be happy to send my students to any one of our neighborhood schools here in Fairbanks, because each one of them is special and has specific things that they're doing amazingly well at their schools. And so just want to encourage families, if the board does make difficult decisions on consolidations, as one of our persons that testified tonight, look into that next school that your students might be going to, get involved in the PTA or PTO there, and build new friendships, because students moving from other schools can set new baselines for students that are there. They can look across the row and be like, I didn't even know that was possible, because students are going to bring new skills, talents, and interests with them, which is going to be an amazing benefit for all of our students in our community.
Move to suspend the rules to finish our business.
Second. Rules have been suspended. Ms. Julian, did you have a follow-up?
I do. Earlier, I think it seems like a lifetime ago, but around January 6th, there was also a video that was sent out to families and also put on social media about how to support students for potential changes. Thank you, because there was, I wrote this down, I can't remember who said this tonight, but somebody said a transition is going to happen next school year. They're anticipating that. So lean forward, support the kids, support the students. Are there any more, yes, thank you, good job. So are there any more plans to give parents and families resources to support their students around this, a scary concept, which is change?
Yes, so there'll be additional information and resources that come out through student support services for families. And then as we've done in past school consolidations, one of the things that families highlight as one of the most important things is our student field trips to other schools and our family open houses at the schools that they would be moving to. And so we want to give students an opportunity to go during the day to see what that school looks like and what are the different activities offered at the school. And then we want parents to be able to come in after hours to meet teachers, walk through the school, get an idea of where their students might go next year. And so those have been really pivotal experiences for families in the past. And we'll talk in more depth about that at next week's work session in terms of the supports available for families, but wanted to call those out as two things that have been important in past consolidations and that we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Ms. Julian. Any other questions from the board? Ms. Charlie.
So I have a question about the Power School cyber hack. I'm just wondering, when are families going to know if their information was involved in that, and what is being done to safeguard the personal information in Power School so that it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Power School is continuing to work with our IT team to let them know whose family's information might have been compromised. Once we know that, we'll work to continue our communication with impacted families of what that means. Power School has assured us that they'll offer credit monitoring activities for any families that have been impacted by that data breach. And want to point out that this Power School data breach wasn't something that just impacted our district, it impacted districts nationwide. But there are types of things that we can do on our side to hopefully prevent future attacks, and our IT team has already implemented those things, and don't want to go into details here in public as to what those patches and fixes are, because that gives bad actors the ability to then try to get around that. But I do want to assure you that our IT team has been working with Power School since we learned of this incident, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that the data that we have stays safe and secure.
Thank you, Ms. Charlie. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, we will move on into information and reports. Moving into our first one up is our policy 93525, charter schools, application procedure for establishing a charter school, annual review of the charter school. Policy 93525, charter schools, is proposed to be revised and is before the board for a report by policy specialist Diana Dillard. Good evening.
Board. Thank you. Ms. Gillum is also here with me for this information. So yes, I'll be providing information on two proposed policies revisions with the intent to bring them forward for first reading at a future meeting. Let me just pull up my notes real quick. So for the first one is policy 935.25. It is the annual review of the charter school. And so in the agenda items, there were two policies provided to you. One is the current, and then one is the revised proposed policy. The revisions change charter school contracts from a 1-year contract term to a 5-year contract term. And just to kind of clarify and make sure that this is really clear as the difference between contracts and charters. So the contracts are the operational agreements between the district and the charter school, and legal guidance and state statute on that is that contract terms cannot exceed 10 years. A charter school's charter is the state-approved agreement that permits the charter school to exist essentially, which must be renewed with the state every 10 years. So those are 4 10-year terms only. So the other revision piece will remove the specific process for reviewing charter schools, as that can be addressed in administrative regulation. State statute requires the district to provide ongoing monitoring of charter schools to ensure that they're complying with legal requirements, and how this review actually occurs is up to the district to decide. We currently renew charter school contracts annually. This is something the district, charter schools, and APCs would like to see extended. The annual process is time intensive and not legally required. Extending contract terms does not limit the district's ability to review a charter school at any time, and amendments to a contract can also be requested by either party during the term of the contract. And that language also was added to the policy for clarification, but that is in state statute. A little more information about overall charter school policies. So really since last year, we've done a lot of work on charter school policy revisions. Because of the move to the Alaska Association of School Boards model policy, we have about 11 policies in section 935 that address charter schools, and ASB has one policy, board policy 6181. So last year, with Ms. Beam, we revised charter school policy to align with that ASB policy, and we went through multiple work sessions with charter school principals. We got feedback from APCs, and we did complete a draft that was ready for work session with the board. However, ASB, we found out, is actually going through a full revision of their charter school policy, so we don't want to do a big overhaul, comprehensive overhaul, before we see what kind of changes they might be making so that we can assess those for our draft. But that one change that both charter schools in the district want to address more immediately is the contract terms. If this policy is adopted, then starting this spring, charter schools will enter a 5-year contract.
Any questions from the board at this time? Mr. Burgess.
Just, this might be a question that I should know already, but what happens if if there is, so this says, if there's evidence of a breach of contract, we have a right to investigate it, but what if we, could we terminate the contract, and what are the consequences if that breach does occur?
I'll take a stab.
I guess,
Dr. Menard.
Yeah. And you're talking contract specific, not charter, that's correct?
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I believe in state statute, it does say that we need to work through a process with a charter school in terms of laying out specific items that we would want to see improved from the charter school, and then a realistic timeline for the charter school to improve meeting those expectations from the school district. If that's clearly articulated to the charter school and they continue not to fulfill those expectations from the board, then at that point in time, the school board could terminate the contract or charter for that charter school.
Mrs. Hardy.
Just confirming, the intent would be if we adopt this, then this year all the charters would still come forward for their contract renewal, and then it would be 5 years from this year.
Yes,
That's correct.
Any other questions from the board? Ms. Maple.
Just for the sake of clarity, from what I've understood about this change, it's a particularly interesting time just for it to come before us because of conversations happening in the community. So to make sure that it's clear and I'm clear that what we're changing here is more to do with the formality of us spending a lot of time every year listening to a contract renewal that, unless there had been some breach of contract, which we would already be aware of, we would not be discovering at the time of that presentation, is going to be approved. So this is essentially ironing out so that we're not, for lack of a better word, wasting our principals' time and the public's by going through a process that is kind of just a formality at this point on those annual. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment, and I'll acknowledge kind of the strange time of bringing this before the board, but it is something that the administration and charter school principals have been talking about for quite some time and wanted to be able to bring this forward to the board, and if approved, that we could implement it for this year's contract cycle. For the listening public that doesn't often follow board meetings, past school boards have spent up to 4 board meetings going through the annual review and then the adoption of contracts. And that has been a very laborious process for both principals, charter schools, APCs, and administration. And so this really is trying to make that process more efficient for all those involved. And also want the board to understand that if there's any issues at any point in time with the contract, that we would have the right to revisit that with the charter school. And so we don't give up that right, but it is a process that we feel like will be much more efficient for all parties involved.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Miss Carol Hubbard.
Thank you, Mrs. Burnett. My question is, what's the downfall? What would be the downfall of doing this? Is there something that we don't know or that we might not anticipate by agreeing to do this? Could we be entering into something and then go, oh, why did we do that? I mean, is there a pitfall? I guess that's what I'm asking.
We're not seeing any pitfalls. I think the only downside is that I think I always enjoy the charter school showcases and wish we did more showcases for schools here within our meetings. And so we might lose that because, we regularly only do that for charter schools on a yearly basis. But I think the benefit of potentially moving to a 5-year contract is maybe that frees up space in the spring to do more student and school showcases for our neighborhood schools, which I would love to do. And so that would be the only downfall that I can think of right now.
Any other questions? Seeing none at this time, we will move on to our next policy. Policy 1240, School-Connected Organizations, is proposed to be revised and is before the board for a report by policy specialists Diana Dillard and Miss Sarah Gillum.
Thank you, President Burnett. This is Board Policy 1240, School-Connected Organizations. This is an ASB model policy that is in Article 1, Community Relations. And if the board remembers, we did already pass Article 1. The reason why this was pulled out was because we wanted to take it to Policy Committee, so the timing just didn't really work out to put it into the Article 1, the full Article 1 that came before the board. If this is adopted, it will replace our current policy 1155 booster orgs. And I apologize for not putting a copy of that into the agenda items, but it is 2 sentences. And it says booster organizations and similar groups can be a valuable means of stimulating interest in and endorsement of the aims and achievements of a school. Booster projects must be coordinated with the principal. So what this new policy does change, though, is it presents a procedural change, which would be the approval will be required to start a booster or school-connected organization. And so that's something new procedurally that we have not done. That approval would be happening at the building administrator level. The goal of this approval process is to provide an opportunity to support communication between the school and the organization, clarify roles and responsibilities in alignment with other district policies and regulations that they have to follow, like fundraising policy, and there's a lot of policies, volunteer rules and stuff like that. We want to ensure the appropriate use of funds and ensure that the organization's purpose aligns with the mission of the district. So we did bring this policy to Policy Committee, and they approved this policy. Their primary concern was to have the procedures clearly outlined in administrative regulation and ready with this policy, because obviously it's going to be a big change, which that is our plan. Also, current organizations will not need approval. So it'll be moving forward, new organizations won't have to go through the approval process. But we are still going to encourage schools to work with organizations to complete the information that will be required as part of the approval process, so that we can just kind of get that information gathered and that process started. the administrative regulation is not complete yet, but some examples of that information might be the name of the organization, membership qualifications, contact information for officers, tax ID information, desired use of money, and then what happens to the funds if the organization does not continue. The administrative regulation draft also says that authorizations shall be automatically renewed each year, and the building administrator may recommend that authorizations be revoked by the superintendent or designee if considered necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Dillard. I have a question real quick before I throw it to other board members. So you did say that this will not affect current standing booster clubs or whatever else that we do have in place. But then you did say that you would be working with organizations and clubs to collect information. That again, are currently established booster clubs, that information's already in, so this isn't like a causing issues for the current standing organizations and clubs that we have.
We would not be approving the current organizations. They're already in, but we just want to start gathering information. So I imagine there's going to be some sort of template that they fill out. That way it's on file at the school. They have a list of their organizations. We have this good information, but they will not have to be approved if they already are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Questions from board members? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Dillard, and thank you, Ms. Gillum. And that will take us into our resolutions. School Board Resolution 2025-13 honors Black History Month and proclaims February 2025 Black History Month and encourages staff and students to honor it during February and throughout the year with interactive research, classroom lesson plans, guest speakers, displays, lectures, practical activities, and cultural celebrations. Mrs. Maple, will you please read Resolution 2025-13?
Yes, thank you, President Burnett. Resolution 2025-13 honoring Black History Month. Whereas since 1926, our country traditionally commemorates and celebrates the contributions of African Americans during February, and whereas since our nation's bicentennial in 1976, each president has issued proclamations declaring February as Black History Month, and whereas African Americans and labor is this year's national theme, focuses on the various and profound ways that work and working of all kinds, free and unfree, skilled and unskilled, vocational and voluntary, intersect with the collective experiences of Black people. And whereas African Americans have contributed significantly to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development of this country, as well as that in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, and whereas African Americans value knowledge and learning, and whereas students of African American heritage are a significant population of the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District's student body, and whereas African American teachers distinguish themselves as educators in Fairbanks North Star Borough School District classrooms, and whereas African American principals and assistant principals have led their schools with vision, and whereas school board members of African American heritage serve with distinction, and whereas African American exempt paraprofessional and classified staff support all students' learning, and whereas incorporating an accurate portrayal of African American history into the curriculum and teaching the contributions of African American history, culture, society, and language in the classroom promotes academic success for African American students, increases the understanding of all students, and benefits all citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education proclaims February 2025 Black History Month and encourages staff and students to honor it during February and throughout the year with interactive research, classroom lesson plans, guest speakers, displays, lectures, practical activities, and cultural celebrations.
Thank you, Mrs. Maple. Next is Resolution 2025-14 honoring Elizabeth Perodovich Day. School Board Resolution 2025-14 proclaims February 16th, 2025 Elizabeth Perodovich Day and encourages staff and students to honor her historic contributions and commitment to the ideals of civil rights and non-discrimination throughout the district and on an ongoing basis. Mrs. Julian, would you please read Resolution 2025-14?
Yes, thank you, President Burnett. Resolution 2025-14, honoring Elizabeth Peronovich Day. Whereas historically, Alaska Natives faced overt discrimination in housing, theaters, hotels, restaurants, and public facilities. And whereas civil rights activist Elizabeth Peronovich, an Alaska Native Tlingit heritage, was a leader in the civil rights movement in Alaska and worked for equal rights and freedoms for all Alaskans. And whereas Elizabeth Peronovich's courage, vision, and impassioned testimonies inspired the Alaska Territorial Legislature to pass a resolution entitled An Act to Provide for Full and Equal Accommodations, Facilities, and Privileges to all citizens in places of public accommodations within the jurisdiction of the Territory of Alaska. And whereas when Governor Ernest Greening signed the Anti-Discrimination Act of 1945 into law in February 16, 1945, it was the first anti-discrimination bill passed in Alaska and occurred 2 decades prior to the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964. And whereas in 1988, the Alaska State Legislature designated each February 16th as the annual Elizabeth Peronovich's Day in honor of her committed pursuit to overcoming discrimination in Alaska. And whereas Alaska's governor annually proclaims February 16 as Elizabeth Peronovich Day in Alaska and encourages all Alaskans to recognize and reflect upon the tremendous contributions Elizabeth Peronovich made to Alaska and her people. Now, therefore, be it resolved, in the Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education proclaims February 16th, 2025, Elizabeth Peronovich Day, and encourages staff and students to honor her historic contributions and commitment to the ideals of civil rights and non-discrimination throughout the district and on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Mrs. Julian. Next is Resolution 2025-15, honoring Career and Technical Education Month. School Board Resolution 2025-15 honors CTE Month and proclaims February 2025 Career Technical Education Month. Mr. Burgess, will you please read Resolution 2025-15?
With pleasure, thank you. Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education Resolution 2024-15 honoring Career and Technical Education Month. Whereas the month of February is nationally recognized as Career and Technical Education, or CTE Month, aimed at fostering public awareness regarding the significance of CTE classes and acknowledging the accomplishments and contributions of these educational programs. And whereas students within the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District are afforded the opportunity to engage in a diverse array of CTE classes, including but not limited to architecture and construction, arts, AV, automotive technology, engineering, health science, hospitality, and information technology. And whereas the spectrum of CTE education spans various modalities, encompassing traditional classroom learning, certification programs, and hands-on work-based learning experiences outside of the classroom settings. And whereas students participating in CTE programs benefit from authentic, meaningful experiences that enhance the quality of their education, elevate their levels of engagement, and contribute to heightened academic achievement. And whereas data indicate that students in the state of Alaska who pursue a minimum of 2 classes within CTE pathways have a graduation rate of 96.3%, and whereas CTE equips students with a blend of academic, technical, and employability skills essential for genuine career readiness, and whereas CTE facilitates early career exploration, enabling students to make well-informed decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways. And whereas projections from the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Handbook forecast that many of the fastest growing jobs through 2033 will be in CTE fields. And whereas leaders in business and industry in Alaska acknowledge the escalating challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with opportunities in critical and burgeoning CTE-related fields, And whereas CTE programs play a pivotal role in preparing students for rewarding careers by providing integrated programs of study that bridge secondary and post-secondary education, leading to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials. And whereas the implementation of CTE programs ensures a qualified and dynamic workforce, contributing to the strength and competitiveness of both Alaska and the Fairbanks North Star Borough economies. Therefore, be it resolved that the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District Board of Education hereby adopts this resolution, officially designating February as National Career and Technical Education Month. During this month and throughout the year, the board encourages our schools and community to celebrate the unwavering commitment to excellence in career and technical education of our district's CTE students and educators, and the positive impact their efforts have on workforce development and economic growth within the Fairbanks North Star Borough and across Alaska.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. And that will bring us to the end of our meeting and into our board comments. And we will start down here with Miss Loa Carroll Hubbard.
Thank you, President Burnett. First, I'd like to just say how very excited I am about the increases in the reading literacy program. Yay. A huge shout out to all the elementary school teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you for what you're doing. We can't do it without you, and you're doing a great job, so we appreciate you. Thank you. I do want to park on the positive for a moment, and I want to congratulate all of the students today who participated in the LAD Elementary School Spelling Bee. There was participation in every level, first graders through 8th, and the competition was fierce, and the spellers at LAD Elementary are just top notch. And there is our phonics program at work and successful right there. There's the proof. I also want to just address a few things that were in the consent agenda. A big thank you to the Fairbanks Gold Mining Inc., which is part of Kinross family. The donation that they made to nutrition services to support past due school meal accounts and then accounts in need. A congratulations to the Boreal Sun Charter School 8th grade students that are heading to Anchorage, Seward, and Miller's Landing May 2nd through the 7th of this year to explore Alaska, to enjoy hiking and various activities in and around Seward with no cost to the district. Yay! Congratulations to Discovery Peak Charter School students heading to Redmond, Washington, January 29th through February 3rd to participate in the Science Olympiad competition with a cost to the district of only one substitute for 2 days. Congratulations also to West Valley High School, JROTC traveling to Anniston, Alabama, February 11th through the 16th to participate in the Service Championship Air Rifle Match, again with a cost to the district of only one substitute for 1 day. And a big congratulations to West Valley and Lathrop High School music students traveling to Spokane, Washington, February 13th through the 16th to participate in the All Northwest Honors Music Ensembles. Again, the cost to the district is only one substitute for 2 days. And then finally, we have congratulations going out to North Pole High School, JROTC students traveling to Camp Perry, Ohio in March, the 18th through the 23rd, to participate in the Air Rifle Service Championship with a cost to the district, again, of only a substitute for 2 days. I have plans to go see Mean Girls, President Burnett, and I just want to say that Fetch isn't going to catch on.
Mrs. Hardy.
I want to start out by echoing something Dr. Meinert said, which is all of our schools are good schools. And I have had the pleasure of not only teaching in so many of those schools, having taught at Hunter, taught at Tanana, and taught at Hutchison High School. I attended Joy, Ann Ween, West Valley, and Tananall Middle School. My children have attended Pearl Creek and Boreal Sun. Every one of those schools are good schools. Any one of us would be lucky to have our children attend any one of those schools. So regardless of how our consolidation vote goes, I think the thing that hits me the hardest is when I hear people afraid of where they're going next. And don't be afraid. They're good schools. I would be fine with my kid attending Hunter. I taught at Hunter. Those teachers there love those kids fiercely, and they will do anything. I bought clothes for my students at Hunter when their house burnt down. You cannot find a more loving community. All our schools are good schools, and all of our students will be okay no matter where they land. It doesn't diminish how hard it is to lose your community. But please know, our students will be okay. It will be hard, but we will be okay. And then, since I have a mic and I'm a nerd, I'm going to go into something that I've been spending the last 2 weeks deep diving into, which is the required local contribution and impact aid. And it is one of those things, if you don't know a lot about it, you need to start learning. A required local contribution is basically a tax that the state collects. It says it's 2.65 mils, which is how we collect taxes. But it's on your real and personal property. So even though we don't tax personal property, we collect taxes on what the state assumes our personal property would be. In Fairbanks, that required local contribution is $37,148,412 last year. On top of that, the state also has something called the discrepancy test, which our district disputed and said they failed this year, but the federal government sided with the state, even though I think we're still actively disputing even that decision. And what that allows the state to do, we're the only state that uses this, it allows them to keep our federal impact aid. And that is money for land that the federal government owns, which is military land, tribal land, national park land. And in lieu of taxes that you can't collect on federal property, they give us impact aid. And in Fairbanks, the amount that the state deducted this past year in our impact aid, so we got a little bit of it, we get to keep 10%, the state can take up to 90. They would keep $9,229,971. The state completely ignores the fact that we have impact aid. That was written in the statute and they just take it. We don't get credit for that impact aid. But if we did, our local community, including our impact aid, contributes $46,378,383 to the education of not just our students, but of the states. Because what happens with both of those numbers is they're subtracted from our basic need. That is money that the state does not have to get. So we have a basic need in Fairbanks determined to be $1,045,500, I'm messing it all up, but 284, which is a significant number. And the state is able to say the first 46 million of that, Fairbanks pays, they don't have to pay. Of our basic need, that 46 million represents 32% of our basic need. In comparison, if you look at Matsu, which has considerably more students, is the second largest district in the state, they have an RLC of 42,173,942, and they have no impact aid. So that is their total contribution. That is 19.98% of their basic need. Fairbanks contributes, when you include our impact aid, more than Matsu. This has been an equity baked into our system since its invention. And I have a sheet that goes through. We have some communities, which I think there's arguably good reasons, who pay nothing. And that I support. But there are other communities, and we don't even pay the most at 32%. We have small rural communities that pay 45 to 46% of their basic need. We need to look at this. And this is not a school board issue. It's not something I can fix. But this is something that our new legislature that was just sworn in today can fix. This is something that is hurting Fairbanks. When we talk about our property taxes, when we talk about why do we pay so much, and yet we seem to be closing our schools, this is part of the problem. We need to address the problem, and the problem isn't at this dais. The problem isn't poor spending or not finding efficiencies. The problem is how we have chosen in Alaska to fund our schools, and it hasn't been looked at since 1998. This doesn't even involve correcting the foundation formula. This is things that we could correct outside the foundation formula to make it so that some communities aren't paying so much while other communities don't pay anything.
Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Mrs. Julian.
Thank you so much, President Burnett, and for those that are staying till the end and also listening on the radio and on YouTube, watching us on YouTube. Tonight, we've talked a lot about advocacy, and we've also been doing a lot of work. Every single one of us in this room, up at this dais, has been deeply dedicated to to finding any solutions that we can that will move us forward and uplift all students. So I'm going to focus on one of the big concerns that I've heard resounding from every single community that has been impacted by the announcement of the school consolidations. So 16 days ago, the administration provided the recommendation to close 5 elementary schools. This is a monumental crossroads for our community. This proposal is proposing closing 1/3 of our remaining neighborhood elementary schools and would impact 11% of our students. A decision of this magnitude requires a tremendous amount of time, energy, and thought from all involved and impacted. Now, it's our job on this board to check that work, check the work of the administration. It's our job to make sure that we have what we need to make an informed decision. And I see every single one of us pushing for that. So thank you. The recommendation that has been put forth thus far is a high-level summary. I, like many of you, need to see data that informed that recommendation. Many from our community have been asking to see more. Specifically, I would like to see a comparative analysis for each quadrant, which led to the recommendation to both close a certain school, but then to also keep others open. I am very pleased to inform you that I have met with the administration to this end, and more data will be forthcoming at the Monday, 27 January public work session. I hope that the data will better illustrate the rationale behind the closure recommendation and address many of the questions that have come forward. Questions like, why this school? Why not that school? What about this? What about that? It is my honor to sit alongside every single one of these fellow board members that are sitting up here tonight as we face this severe decision. I am proud of the work that I see every single one of us doing. We are all going above and beyond the public meetings, the public hearings, and the public listening sessions. I see every single one of you exhausting yourselves because we share a common goal. And I see that goal as being to strengthen our public schools so that all of our students and more of our students can thrive. I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be able to say that. I assure you listening tonight, the public, that we are listening to you as we consider the administration's recommended school consolidation plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Julian. Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, President Burnett. So I want to start by saying thank you to the mayor. I appreciate the information being brought forward and the request from the borough to take into account the effect of school closures on the borough. I understand where that request is coming from. I do need to say that our job as a board is to determine what is best for the district. And while I am sure that all of us up here at this dais will consider all of the information that we get from any source to the extent possible, including from the borough, our job is really to make the decisions that we have to make based on student needs above all else. So what's best for our students? Next I want to say, you know, a lot of what some of what I've heard from folks who are facing school closure or even displacement from a school that's not closing, there, as Mrs. Hardy said, there have been a lot of concerns expressed and people worrying about which school they're going to end up going to or who else is going to be at that school. And some of that has been centered around the average test scores of each school. People saying, you know, some schools are the best or better than others because of the consistent testing score, the high test scores compared to others. And I just wanted to push back against that because when we're talking about average test scores in a school, you can't really tie that to an individual student's academic success. That is not the way that we are meant to use those data. They are really for tracking trends, both demographic or over time. And that's the best way to use those when you're averaging test scores for a particular school or district or state or whatever. So you know, I'm just want to say that parents considering pulling their students out of the district or homeschooling or even leaving the district because their students won't attend the particular school that they want them to or that they've identified as what they think is the best. I just want to say, to quote one of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams, "Don't panic." That's from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic. Again, the average test scores of a school are not necessarily tied to an individual student's academic success. In fact, this test scores of an individual student are not always tied to that student's academic success. And that's because oftentimes, you know, some students just have challenges with test taking. They might know the curriculum just fine, but the tests just don't go well. So actual predictors of academic success. Oh, and I also want to say academic success itself isn't always necessarily correlated with lifelong success. So there's also that. But actual predictors of academic success are socioeconomic status, parental involvement, and then things like class size. So if we pack a lot of students into classes, the higher the class size, the worse the outcomes for on average for that class in general. So instead of panicking, let's build hope. Let's remember that all of our schools are amazing and that we have an opportunity, even though we are going through a painful process of breaking apart certain school communities. Let's remember that we have an opportunity to build new connections, build new communities. And, you know, the decision that the board has to make, it's a big one, but it hasn't been made yet. I want to be clear on that point. As Ms. Doolian was saying, we are listening, we are trying to understand all the data, and it is up to the board whether to accept the proposed plan, make changes to it, or reject it altogether. And so please continue advocating for your school and for the district as a whole, and for getting all the information that you need to understand our decision, just as we're doing. But while you do that, please also advocate for the district as a whole, for the community as a whole. Don't pit schools against each other. And I'm asking people to be careful to avoid language that might stigmatize students from a certain school or a certain demographic, and avoid language that might sound critical of other schools or elevate one school above another, because we know that all of our district schools are great in their own way. And we hear from students and families at each of our schools that the school is important to them, that they love the school. It doesn't matter what average test scores are produced at that school. We've gotten feedback that some of our neighborhood schools save lives, right? And every student loves their school. Every family that talks to us, okay, maybe not every family, but the majority of families that we hear from, they love their schools, the school that they're currently attending. So just please avoid that stigma, avoid elevating your school above others, because it's affecting our students at those other schools. And we don't need to make this harder on anyone than it already is. So again, understand that the board is listening to your concerns, and we're going to do what we can to make the least bad decision here. I am, with all of this in mind, I want us to also model resiliency to our students, show them that you're not panicking and that we will be okay, that we can embrace change even as it's difficult, because that's what they're going to need. That's what our students are going to need to get through this with the least harm done. And understand, again, so next week, I'm looking forward to hearing more about a support plan for students. That's on our next work session's agenda. Support plan for students, families, and staff. And I do hope that it includes ways that schools accepting students that are displaced can collaborate with one another, suggestions on how they can do that, to maintain bonds between students, and to strengthen connections between schools. I hope that schools can work with one another, and maybe even, I don't know, I'm envisioning joint field trips, that kind of thing, anything that can help maintain these connections between students. We are many schools, we are many communities, but we are one district. And I want everybody to remember that as we move forward with whatever plan comes out of this and through our budget cycle and beyond. And take your passion and your hope for a better school system to the borough and the legislature, because they are who we need to advocate to in order to get sustainable and adequate and sustainable funding so that we can actually start planning for revitalization, for a better future for our district. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Mrs. Maple.
I don't want to be following all of you tonight. You're very well put together, articulated, and researched comments, and mine are discombobulated. But I wanted to start by acknowledging that I ran on the promise of making all of our community feel seen and represented. So to those of you that are feeling particularly erased or fearful today, I see you, and I'm still here to represent you. I told you it'd be discombobulated. My daughter Keiko went to Pearl Creek and was in Jesse Hensel's class and got to do his program working with FNA elders, and was in his first grade class when the pandemic closed down the schools. And I told him last year when he testified that her very first question when she found out she wasn't going to be going back to school for who knows how long was, but when will I see my buddy? So I was glad that you spoke to it more after Jesse took his 3 minutes and couldn't tell us all of the beauties of that program, and wanted to share that Keiko was in it as well, or benefited from it. I also wanted to acknowledge that, something that came up a lot tonight, and was talking about, what are we going to see coming from the borough as we're asking for the borough to make really difficult decisions this year to try to mitigate some of the catastrophic impact of our budget shortfalls. And I want to acknowledge that, if you are ready to advocate to the assembly, it can be really challenging to go and, say, I want you to fund education, and be faced with the follow-up question of, well, what would you like us to cut? And I am speaking in, obviously I'm not on the borough assembly, but I believe wholeheartedly that when anybody on our assembly asks that question of you, they mean it genuinely, that they are asking you out of genuine curiosity. If you want us to prioritize education, please share with us what that means to you. And I intend, as my own person, to share those things. But I just want to encourage anybody that finds themselves in that situation, don't be scared of that question. It's a hard one, and we all have to really think about what prioritizing education funding means for our community as a whole. I also wanted to share that I have found myself in the very surprising space of being a wrestling mom as of recently. I never really thought I'd be a sports mom at all, but I've spent 2 Saturdays at all-day wrestling matches, which is a place I just never thought I'd be. And I wanted to share something that happened at one of the matches. It was my daughter's first match. She's in 6th grade, so first opportunity to participate. And it was her 3rd bout against a girl from another school that was older, more experienced. And at the end of the bout, there were some big processing of how the bout went happening. And I don't know that this coach remembers it or if my daughter remembers it, but I watched my daughter, who goes to Randy Smith, have the coach from Tanana Middle School wrap his arm around her and say, I can see that you belong here. I expect to see you back here next week. And it just filled me with warm fuzzies, which was the last thing I expected to experience at a stinky wrestling match. And it just reminded me how much love is in this community, in every single school, and just completely across the board at wrestling matches, just as much as at, piano lessons or anywhere else where you might expect to get warm fuzzies. So I wanted to share that. I bet that coach doesn't remember it, but I hope that this makes it back to him so that he knows that he made this parent feel really proud to be a part of this district. And then there was one more. I wanted to share, I preface this is my last thing, and then I'll be quiet, that I am not saying this as well, I lived through it, so you can too, but more as just an explanation that, well, I'll just get to it. So I lived 1.2 miles from Pearl Creek Elementary, and that's where my daughter went, K through 5. And so that's a 2-minute drive, 5-minute bike ride, 15-minute walk. And her bus ride is 1 hour, because she would leave Pearl Creek and then go all the way up Farmers Loop, do the whole run and come back, because it wasn't safe for her to cross Farmers Loop. And it did make me angry. First of all, I wanted it to be different. And the bus driver, who I talked to, and the bus driver was like, I mean, I guess we could do that, but I don't think it's safe. And I thought, well, never mind. I'm not going to question your expertise as the bus driver about what would be safe. but we did adapt. And no, I'm sure she didn't love it all the time. And it doesn't mean that we should just be fine with having extraordinary bus routes and lengths. And of course, we're striving to improve our transportation services. But sometimes, even if you live 1 mile from your kid's school, the reality of our complicated, slowly built town is going to mean that there are pretty significant inconveniences. So, we adapted. I don't want everybody to have to be on the bus for an hour, but even if you live a mile away, sometimes it happens. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Maple. And I'll just end things with advocate. The borough, the state, if you need to know how, reach out. We will help you. We know how to get a hold of them. We know how to point you in those directions. And we need people to advocate this year. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Again.
Without objection, we are adjourned.